It's time for MacBreak Weekly. Andy, Alex, and Jason are here. Is a new MacBook Air 15-inch coming in a couple of months. We'll talk about the macOS and iOS update that just came out yesterday and why you really should run and get it. Then Jason will review the new HomePods. He's got them. It's all coming up next on MacBreak Weekly.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit. This is MacBreak Weekly, episode 857, recorded Tuesday, Valentine's Day, February 14th, 2023. Appleback. This episode of MacBreak Weekly is brought to you by ZipRecruiter. Are you hiring for your team? Despite current headlines, several industries like hospitality and healthcare are heading for a hiring boom. No matter what industry you're in, if you need to hire, go to ZipRecruiter.com/MacBreak and try it for free. Thanks for listening to this show. As an ad-supported network, we are always looking for new partners with products and services that will benefit our qualified audience. Are you ready to grow your business? Reach out to advertise@twit.tv and launch your campaign now. It's time for MacBreak Weekly, the show where we cover the latest Apple news, of which there's very precious little. Jason Snell's sitting next to me. He's here.
Hi. I'm here.
How you doing?
I'm the problem. It's me. No, I should really, honestly, it's great to be here. I haven't been here since my first show as a regular. Quite frankly, I should be here more often.
You live
I'm
like
just lazy.
Next door.
It's less. It's like a half an hour away.
Oh, okay.
So I need to get out of my garage. Thank you for giving me an excuse to go outside.
But how's your dog? Is Maisie going to be all right?
She's, we leave her for a few hours at a time, and she can handle it, so she'll be okay. She'll be okay. I've separated her from the cats.
I don't want to create anxiety or anything.
Because the cats will beat her up. Jason
wrote a shortcut to insert stuff right into our show notes. As a result, you have doubled, which I thank you, doubled the number of things in the show notes.
Andy put a lot of stuff in there, too. We were pasting over each other
earlier today.
So.
Whiz, whiz, bing, bang, boom, 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 boom.
We're trying to help because we have to pitch in, Leo. We all have to pitch in these times
of need.
Of famine, news famine.
News famine. That's Andy and Akko. WGBH's answer to, I don't know.
Question.
Each news story according to his need. Each news story according to.
I was going to say Cliff Clavin.
Whatever.
Did that work?
I wouldn't really like that. Not particularly.
That's why I stopped.
I mean, you're the head of the show, but I mean, I will. I am loyal. But
he's like a correct Cliff Clavin.
I think he's GBH's answer to you. I think technically
that's actually the answer. You know who's really Cliff Clavin?
I have enough trouble.
GPT is Cliff Clavin.
Yes, very confident.
Confidently wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Hello, Andrew. Hello. Good to see you,
Jason. If you consider double dipping, like you can start driving for DoorDash, and so like every time like Twit like phones in their lunch order, you could be the one who picks it up and drives it in.
Yeah, if you guys need anything from Marin County, just let me know before I get it here, and I'll bring it up. Just pick it up.
We imported this from Marin County.
So you want me to go to Donut Alley, bring in some donuts in Larkspur? I can do that. Sure.
I want you to bring Ben Affleck. Did you see his Dunkin' ads? Wait a minute. Before I do that, let's say hello to Alex Lindsay, Pittsburgh Steelers fan, and main mensch at officehours.global, 090.media for his day job. I liked the Ben Affleck. In fact, I went and, it worked because it made me go to YouTube and watch all the other outtakes of Ben pretending to be a Dunkin' employee. It was funny.
I think it's funny how many ads now they put a bunch of other ads or longer versions of all the ads on YouTube.
Yeah, because it's $7 million for half a minute of the Super Bowl. So
yeah, exactly.
So they make a 5-minute ad, and they keep the rest for. And if they can drive you to YouTube, I think that's like a big win.
It's way stickier.
Yeah,
it's a huge win. Yeah, absolutely.
We've reached the point
QR
where
codes.
I can no longer tell the difference between real Super Bowl ads and parody Super Bowl ads.
I know.
Because they ran the Netflix ad for that Matt Damon, Ben Affleck movie, which is about Nike signing Michael Jordan and starting the Air Jordan shoes. I don't think
that's going to be a good movie.
Well, yeah, but I sat there for the entire run of that ad thinking, this is a parody, right? This is a joke, right? This isn't a real movie, right? And then as it was going, I'm like, I guess it really is a movie, but like I can't tell anymore. I guess that's a movie.
No, my thing is like now that they're so desperate that it used to be enough to air the ads, then it used to be enough to like put them on YouTube a few days or a week before. Now, like a month before, I'm seeing like a really stupid news story of what seems like a manufactured controversy about M&Ms, and I'm like, wait a minute. They're setting up some stupid guerrilla marketing thing for, oh God, it was, but immediately I'm like, I refuse to click on any of these links in my news feed. I refuse to use anything like this. This is clearly them trying to manipulate me, and I will not be manipulated by these specific people on this specific occasion.
That one I was amazed at, because we've talked about this. I mean, in what I do, we've talked about the idea of building, 1 month, 2 month build-ups to a Super Bowl ad for years, and no one's really done it very well. And this one I don't think was perfect. It didn't, but it's gotten the closest that I've seen where you're setting something up for, and we were talking about, then you use Instagram and YouTube and, Twitter and all these things to kind of build up towards something, and then you fade it out and do something else for the next one. But I thought when I saw the ad at first, I was like, what are they doing? And then I was like, same with Andy. I was like, oh, I get it.
You know what we didn't see on Sunday? Any crypto ads.
Strange.
Did something happen? The irony was so thick, though. I mean, the FTX, in my opinion, the FTX ad from last year or the year before.
It was a great ad.
Last year.
Great ad.
The best ad my favorite ad, other than maybe the Apple ad, is my favorite ad ever is the Larry David one. Yeah. The 2.5-minute version on YouTube.
That one drove you to YouTube, didn't it? Yeah.
It was like a 30-second ad was good, but the full ad was just hilarious. And the fact that the whole ad is about FTX is going to be fine, like it's just normal, like the wheel or like other things like that. It turns out that, and then I realized there he is saying, here's the best part. They're suing Larry David for the money, except here's what his lawyer is going to say, except that in the commercial,
he says,
I don't think it's going to work.
It was right.
Yeah.
Who knew? Yeah. So there were only 2 QR codes in the Super Bowl.
Well, there are more than that.
I saw more.
This year there were 2.
Oh, yeah. No, I think there are more.
Marketing Daily says there was Limit Break and Michelob Ultra.
Well, the problem is that you also have people buy ads on local markets.
Oh, you saw local ads.
And they roll them in, and so it's hard to get an exact number.
This is in the national scope of things.
I got my brother has the family has a golf course. He runs the golf course, and you can buy cable ads locally, and they just kind of randomly get inserted sometimes, into these things. And he had one of the ads for his golf course inserted into the Super Bowl, and he said that the phone started ringing, like it was there. The phone's like, and it would just ring every time you put it down. Like he said, if you don't think advertising works,
wow.
He goes, I've never.
And that was a local. That wasn't even. That was
a local ad, and he said every time I put the phone down, it just rang, and
people are watching.
Kept on just picking it up.
I think maybe the last great national place we all can watch at the same time, right?
It shows us why sports rights are valuable too. Right?
Yeah.
Like this is why sports rights. This is why everybody overpays for sports rights.
Notice who was sponsor of the pregame show was YouTube to promote the fact that they have Sunday Ticket.
Yeah, and they had a good ad too, which was very simple. Which was, do you know how to watch YouTube? Then you don't have to put a satellite dish on your roof anymore. You can get NFL Sunday Ticket. If
that
you know
was
how
the
to
big
use
line,
YouTube.
right? You don't need a satellite anymore.
Yeah, because it was a
watched it.
deal.
I watched the game through YouTube TV, and I thought it looked great.
Yeah, they had 4K, didn't they? Fox.
Yeah, they did.
Upscaled 1080p, but still looks better.
Well, the HDR actually, you can really tell the color and the bright whites. It looks really great. Yeah.
I think it was actually
me throw my TV out. Actually,
that's right. It's a shame. It's a very expensive Super Bowl for you.
It was. After that, I said I'm getting a better TV.
I think it actually was 4K all the way through. Yeah, on this one.
Oh wow.
Well, when your phone is actually technically the best screen in the house,
that's a bad sign.
So stupid?
And it probably is.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. My iPad Pro screen is truly the best screen in the house.
Most accurate.
Exactly. I've been using. I have not terrible screens like big screens hooked up to my desktops here, but only when I use my iPad Pro as an external display is when I realize that maybe I should be dragging my Photoshop window into there and just using the big 27-inch screen just for palettes and stuff.
Does anybody remember? Odd. So one of the 2 QR codes nationally was something called Limit Break. Does anybody remember that ad? Do you remember what they were offering with the QR code? Scan for access to an NFT, promoting a game called Digi Daiguku.
Boy.
So here's the funny thing: is
waste
that
of
link,
$7 million.
I build I build QR codes a lot. So anytime someone puts a QR code up, I go to it because I want to see what it does and how it works and everything else. And that one actually went to the Twitter account. At least when I did it, it went to the Twitter account of the CEO of the company that, see if it does it for you, but it could be changed over time. But
it goes it's to the Twitter.
And how many followers does he have now?
And he says follow to win. Yeah, and so he has 1 million followers now, so that worked.
When I hit it, he had about 800,000, so he added like 150,000 yesterday, and maybe he was less than that at the beginning of the day. But so there was that. There was the animal control had one, because he just talked the whole time about animal. The actor talked about that. I know that there were more. There was. Okay. I saw at least 3 or 4 of them.
Oh, that's okay. Maybe Marketing Daily missed it.
It's a tricky thing to do QR codes in 30 seconds because you have to persuade.
Well, don't we tell
people
not to scan QR codes at random? Yeah. Is that risky or no?
Trust it. I think people trust it if they're saying $7 million, there's
in the
probably
Super Bowl.
A couple people that checked it.
Yeah.
There's probably some agreements about what that QR code can do. I wouldn't worry about it as much there as I would other places.
But it also means that there's a certain amount of desperation to harvest as much data, valuable resellable data as possible to offset the cost of that.
No kidding.
It may be harvesting the data, or just in the case of the Twitter account, harvesting just people that you're gonna get to come back to again. So he's now got another 200,000 people that he can at least reach. After the ad, you make that impression, but you don't remember. Like there was another one that I saw that we were excited because Mr. Beast was on in one of the ads, the one with the flag football.
Mr. Beast was in that. There were a lot of people in that ad. You might have missed.
There were a lot of people in it, but Jimmy's in it. Right when he goes. The Mr. Beast is there when she runs by and he goes, "I missed it," and that's Mr. Beast. so anyway, but all of us remembered that Mr. Beast was in it, but none of us could remember what the ad was about.
It was flag football, right?
Yeah, that was just basically a PSA.
Football?
It was a PSA.
Because it's the fastest growing girls sport in America, I think, is flag football.
Was it the Flag Manufacturers of America?
It was the NFL.
Who's promoting
It's the
that?
NFL because they want to push. It's like PR
because the Pro Bowl is flag football. They're promoting because you know what they realize at some point. The
NFL may be flag football too.
The NFL is going to have to be because it's too dangerous.
I think the other thing is a huge part of people who watch football are people who used to play football, and so if more women play football, then they're more likely to watch football.
Aren't you smart?
Even if they're not playing the contact version. So.
You're a marketing wizard.
Generation of football players,
right?
Watch out, pickleball.
Pickleball's next.
You said the word.
I won't play a game called pickleball. That's all
sport of the future.
And it's the sport of the now for people over a certain age.
That's kickboxing, Jason. I think you're thinking of the word kickboxing.
Reference acknowledged.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, stories about Apple.
Okay.
Did you get the update? You should. All those stuff was updated. macOS, iOS, iPadOS. I don't know if tvOS and watchOS were too, but it was a WebKit, a serious WebKit flaw. This is the CVE for macOS Ventura 13.2.1, which came out, I think, yesterday. Impact. There's a WebKit flaw. Processing maliciously crafted web content may lead to arbitrary code execution. Apple is, and this is the worst part, aware of a report that this issue may have been actively exploited. In other words, a 0-day WebKit, that's about as bad as you can get. That means you go to a website and it's maliciously crafted, and they own your thing. So...
Your Apple device.
Your Apple device is what I was going to say. Thank you very much.
Yeah. It also is an important fix for those who are having some library issues with Final Cut Pro. So there's some fixes that are hidden in there that a lot of folks on the Twitterverse have been talking about that it fixes some problems that we've been having with big libraries and some external plugins that have had some issues. So
iOS 16.3.1 as well as iPadOS 16.3.1, and Safari is updated on older versions of macOS to support this. I guess tvOS went to 16.3.2. watchOS to 9.3.1. All of that yesterday. Happy Valentine's Day from Apple. I think, though, the point being, do it. Except if you're using Google Photos, then maybe don't do it. Actually, I've had I thought, oh my God. And because I had updated everything, I went to Google Photos. Everything seems to be running. I don't know if Google fixed its Photos app or something happened. Have you tried?
I haven't.
Try on your iPhone, somebody. Just supposedly it crashes Google Photos. If you're a Google, this is
a new
9 to 5
version
Mac.
of Google Photos is now available. So I guess Google then pushed their own update
They pushed
to
an
fix
update
it.
to fix it. Okay, so if you have that problem.
I don't know why she swallowed the fly. You just keep updating things to update other things to update other things to stop all the crashes.
That's good because otherwise Tim Cook might have been in the awful position of once again having to say when people complain about it that we'd really like to see you move all those Google Photos over to Apple Photos.
Yeah. I didn't have the problem to begin with, and I do have the updated now Google Photos, and I still don't have the problem. So that's good all around.
Great.
I guess, right? I'm not sure. We don't know. Google hasn't said. They did put out a fix, but they haven't said what the fix.
I knew we shouldn't have used that WebKit 0-day flaw.
Oh, it could be, couldn't it? It says I'm sure Google Photos has to use WebKit to render.
We shouldn't have had ChatGPT create our code for updating Google Photos. That was just a mistake. That was an own goal.
Damn it.
Yeah. Apple has gotten better at releasing these security-based software updates faster.
They're
seem
good.
to be
Well, especially when
pretty quick at
it's a 0-day. That's important.
Mm-hmm.
They had reports that it was being exploited. And that sounds to me, generally, that sounds like a zero-click exploit because it's a web page. WebKit renders it. They have now rooted your device. That's pretty bad. So something to be aware of.
Yeah.
And I guess it's safe to update to 16.3.1 if you are a Google Photos user now. Just get the latest Google Photos as well. Well, that's our show. Thank you, everybody, for joining.
It's been great to be
there's
here.
there's other news. It's mostly, rumor-like. How about this? Mark Gurman says the 15.5-inch MacBook Air is a-coming next month or April, I guess. Early April. Is that next month? March, April. No, 2 months from now.
I think this was Ross Young, the display analyst, actually.
Oh, was it not Gurman?
And he knows because he knows that they're making the panel, right? He knows the specs of the panel that's being manufactured for the display, and that's the giveaway, right? Is they know it's not a MacBook Pro display. They know it's not an iPad display. It's a MacBook Air display, but it's in this larger size, 15.5, 15.3. It's like a large. They're basically going to do a large print edition of the MacBook Air, and I think that's great because right now, if you want a bigger than MacBook Air screen on a Mac laptop, you got to pay $2,000.
This is strange from Apple Insider. The new MacBook Air might also receive a Mag 3 connector for charging as opposed to charging via USB-C port, but the M2 MacBook Air has a MagSafe.
Yes, it already does.
Are they confused?
They are confused. I see that a lot where people forget that the M2 MacBook Air exists because they are still selling them the M1 MacBook Air, but I assume this is going to look like the M2 MacBook Air.
It's an M2 with, and now this can't possibly be an M3? No, 3 nanometer. No. So I heard somebody say a 3 nanometer maybe.
No, it's going to be literally like the one that I've got here.
Only bigger.
M2 Air, only bigger so that you can get more screen. And otherwise, I imagine the specs will be exactly the same.
The dots per inch will stay the same too, right?
I think so.
When you said the
large print edition,
it scared me.
No, I imagine it'll have more resolution than this display did. I'm remembering the old iBook. Do you remember that there was the large iBook that had the literally same pixel count as the smaller iBook?
That would be bad.
That would be bad, but I don't think that's what's going to be here. I think this idea here is that everything else is the same, but it's got a screen with more pixels and more size. So, because not everybody likes a 13-inch display. So having a 15-plus inch display is a great option.
So this was Ross Young in a tweet to super followers.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand Twitter anymore, so I don't know what that means. But
it's like a newsletter, but on Twitter.
But you pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
So he's on the supply chain, and he knows that. In fact, he said that this would happen last year. He said it would happen in the spring. And then he said in his tweet to super followers,
they're making them.
That they're actually manufacturing started this month, product launching in April. That's about right.
And it's a pretty clever way of figuring out what a company that doesn't pre-announce its products is doing, is looking at the supply chain and saying, this thing has to be for a big MacBook Air, and they just started rolling them off the assembly line. And we know from Tim Cook, right? Like, Tim Cook is not somebody who stores boxes full of tens of thousands of
if
parts
they're making it
somewhere. Those are going just in time to an Apple factory where they're being assembled together because that's how Apple makes products.
Ming-Chi Kuo had said last year that there would be a 15-inch in late 2023. It would be called a MacBook instead of a MacBook Air.
I mean, maybe. That's
Maybe?
marketing.
I guess it's still possible. It's just a name.
They don't even put the name on it anymore, right? It's just...
There's no name on yours?
I don't think so.
Underneath?
No.
There's no more
nowhere.
etched?
No, there's nothing. On the Pros there are, but not on the MacBook Air. So they could call it MacBook or whatever they wanted, MacBook Studio or MacBook
could make up a name.
something else. They can make up
What
a
do
name.
you all think of the rumor that that's the last Mac Studio, that was just an interim product and that they're never going to make another one again?
I hope not.
That would be very disappointing. I thought the Mac Studio was I bought two, one for me and one for Lisa. I thought it was a very nice machine.
I kind of believe the speculation that it might be in every other with the Mac Pro, that they'll do a Mac Studio every other generation and a Mac Pro every other generation. If you have a Mac Pro and a Mac Studio, there's kind of overlap in the line, yeah? The Mac Pro is going to be way more expensive, though.
Yeah, I think that there is it does seem like there's an overlap. Where there's the iPad, the Mac Mini Pro overlaps the Studio, but doesn't have the fan and doesn't have, some of the I/O. And I don't think that's going to change in that form factor.
That's the Mini, though. Then there's the Mini. There's the Mini.
Then you have the Studio.
Then you have the Studio with a giant
I/O
fan.
And a big fan, which makes a big difference on more extended production.
Yeah.
And then you would have the Pro. And I think the thing the Pro adds is external cards, more modularity. Those types of things will most likely be what we see under the Pro. So I think that there's a space for all of those, for the Mac Mini.
It's like the MacBreak Weekly panel. You're the Pro, Jason's the Studio, and I'm sorry, Andy, but you're the Mini. Mini Pro, not Mini Pro. Let's be fair.
That's okay. That's an upgrade from Clavin.
No, I'm just thinking you're the natural purchaser of the Mini Pro, I would say.
Yes.
Yes. And Snell is the natural purchaser of the Studio. I'm leaving myself out of this. I'm going to get an Etch-a-Sketch. And then Alex, clearly, if anybody's going to buy the Pro, it'd be you, Mr. Lindsay.
The only reason I bought the Studio is because I didn't know when the Pro would come out, which I'm glad I did because I was waiting for the Pro.
I think there's a distinct audience for the Studio, so I hope it doesn't go away.
I love the Studio.
I would not buy a Mac Pro, right?
No.
I'm never going to do that, but I did shell out for the more powerful Studio, and I can fit that in my life. But
the Studio's overkill anyway for most of us.
Yeah, I mean, well, honestly, even the high-end Mini is probably overkill for most of us. The M2 MacBook Air is probably overkill for most of us. That's where we are now. But certainly that Studio, well, I didn't buy the Ultra, right? Like I bought the Max version of the Studio too, because that was...
Yeah. I gave Lisa the Ultra because she says, I have to have the fastest. And I said, okay, you get the Ultra. You'll never, that's a lot of headroom for you. But if you want it, you got it. And I got the Pro.
I just think some people are not going to buy a giant tower, and they...
It's perfect.
So why would you...
At first we thought it was a little fat, because it's a tall Mini.
Yeah.
But it's just kind of sweet. It's nice.
Yeah,
it's a good fit.
The signature of the Studio could literally be that it's double high and it's got a super aggressive cooling. So if you imagine like a future piece of Apple Silicon that is going to be suitable for people who not necessarily in the market for a Mac Pro, but they want, as you say, all that headroom. So let's make this super fast. And now we can't make this work inside the Mac Mini form factor, but if we put this huge nuclear power plant cooling tower on top of it, yes, we can get this design this chip that will fit inside that mini desktop form factor. I think that we're going to see more of a differentiation with the introduction of new CPUs in the future.
And again, even if you could get almost to the same power with the Mini Pro, it is much better to get the Studio at the same price because of the heat dissipation, the more I/O. I know that my Studio, all the I/O is full all the time. Like with my Mac Studio, like I could use more, at that point.
Jason says they should have made it a cube.
Yeah, I mean, the only way the Mac Studio could be improved is if they just made it taller and called it the M1 Cube.
So close.
Because cubes are best.
Right.
What if they just took like the case moldings for the Mac G4 and basically made it into like a cluster. So basically you can put them in like a toast, like you can stack them in like like slices of bread in a bread bag.
Nice.
And that basically they find each other and and once they find themselves in the same container.
Let's do it. Let's start a rumor that's the next Mac Pro. Let's
no,
it's right behind him. There it is.
We got to put it in the newsletter. We got to put it in the newsletter.
I loved that cube.
I love the cube.
That was a great thing.
Yep.
But it was plastic. Now you could do it with aluminum. It'd be beautiful.
It had a crunchy metal shell or interior.
Inside.
Interior, but the plastic on the outside. That's true. That's true. They would do it all aluminum
would it
now.
Squirt if you bit into it?
No, I mean, your blood would squirt out if you bit into it. Is what would happen.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, moving on. Actually,
it had a good.
Is the Studio the best Mac for most desktop?
Oh, desktop
for people. I mean, for
no.
I think the MacBook Air.
I don't think for the average
is the
person.
best
If I was
Mac, right? That's the best Mac.
I think so.
Certainly the best seller.
Yeah.
The Air. You got the M2 Air, but
I don't know. I mean, I think I could argue that the iMac is the best desktop Mac for people because most people don't need more even
It's
than
simple.
that M1, and
Yeah.
it comes with its own display, and
Simple.
it's really nice. And
Small, though,
comes in
24
colors.
inches. That's
Yeah,
a
but
small,
but most people
That's all
do
they
they
need?
need more than a 24-inch display?
do
Like,
normal people like 24-inch displays? Is that normal?
I don't know. Let's ask them. Can you find some? We're not
Anybody?
here. Nope.
Bueller? Anybody?
Right, for mainstream, for regular use. And when you talk to Apple about how that iMac gets used, it is like in schools and in families and at hotel lobbies and all sorts of weird places where it is. But it's just sort of like, hey, I just need a computer on a desk. Can you get me that? I don't want to plug in a display. I don't want to do any of that. Can you do that? And that even today, that M1 iMac is going to do everything they need.
And they don't do a 27 because it would be more expensive? People not want bigger screens?
Apple seems to have come to the opinion that the 27 people who are buying a 27-inch
Should get a
display
mini.
should probably buy an external display and
Get
then
the
attach a
studio
computer to
display
it. Yeah.
and a Mac Mini.
Yeah.
Which would cost like a lot of money, right? That's $1,500 plus whatever, $800 or $900. That we're talking.
It'd be more than a
27-inch
27-inch iMac.
Yeah.
Although you could then replace the computer a few
Right.
years down the road and keep the display. Right?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's kind of one of the advantages is that I know that for this in Rwanda, when we first built a school, we built them all with iMacs. And the real problem we had is anytime you had to fix them, it was like expensive and cumbersome and everything else.
They're pretty, but not
we're looking at
practical.
getting another set of them, and they're
Yeah.
all going to be Mac Minis.
They're like
You know,
the
that- you know,
poodles
we're not
of
gonna-
computers.
Yeah, so
Good
I
looking,
think that
but not practical.
I'd much rather
Don't
have
shed.
not pay for the only pay for the screen
Don't
once,
shed,
or
that's
be able to
true.
replace the screen or that type of thing.
Jason got his HomePods.
I did.
Gen 2.
I had a Sonos one, an original HomePod, a new HomePod, and a HomePod Mini all lined up in a row. Stereo pairs.
To
lined
see
up,
how they sound.
lined up in both sides of my office. I had
You did a test.
I did the whole thing. And the answer is the problem is not how they sound.
Okay. What's the problem?
The problem is everything else. The problem is that AirPlay is not reliable, that Siri is not reliable, and that the stereo pair system that they built is not reliable.
Oh, no. That's disappointing.
So, in the end, would I recommend HomePods to my friends who are super techie and care about sound? Yes, because they sound good. They sound really good. They sound about the same as the old ones. They're not the same. They sound different,
They have
but
fewer tweeters.
yeah, although the high end actually sounds, I think, more clear than in the first generation. It's a little less bassy than the first generation, but in the end, if somebody snuck into your house and swapped the old ones out for the new ones, most people would never notice. They look the same essentially. They sound same-ish, not the same, but same-ish. The problem is that in all of my testing of all these things, I kept on having like one of them didn't play. But it was still on and it would still respond to the sounds.
They were
but
stereo pairs, but only
stereo
one
play, only
channel?
one plays. I press pause, I play it again, now two play. Then I pause, then I play it again, now one play. And I tested it on Mac. I tested it on AirPlay from an iPad, from an iPhone. I tried it right on the device. Just
That's frustrating.
super unreliable. The old one wasn't particularly reliable either. This isn't new. This has been a problem with the HomePod stuff from the beginning. Siri, people like to beat up on Siri. The problem with Siri is not that it can't be good. It's that it's not reliable. That sometimes I get answers back from Siri almost immediately, or it'll play something almost immediately. And then other times it just spins forever, doesn't understand me, doesn't know what to do, or it identifies what I want to play, and then it hands it off to Apple Music, and Apple Music just sort of doesn't play it. So I think it's just a fundamental problem with Apple's whole kind of smart home infrastructure here, that they've made a really good sounding speaker, but it's just, I would never inflict this on one of my friends who's not in the tech industry, who's just like, hey, Jason, I'm looking for some smart speakers. What should I get? And I'm like, I could never recommend them a stereo pair of HomePods.
Interesting.
Just couldn't do
Now,
it.
my Apple TV is always saying, come on, you want to use those HomePods for speakers, right? I say, no, I have speakers, but it keeps saying it. Is it a good choice for a TV? Apple TV?
I mean, maybe.
Did you try that?
Maybe. I haven't
That would
tried
be
that in a
annoying
little
if the
while.
sound didn't.
The problem is when the Apple TV is driving the stereo pair, is it reliable or not?
Right.
And then the other challenge is like,
is it laggy? Would bother me.
You're setting up a stereo pair. You're getting a stereo out. Like I have a 5.1 system. Like you get the center channel. I really like having the center channel, but you could do it. I mean, there's some options there. If you're playing video games, you shouldn't do it because you're going to, even though it will route your audio from your TV back into the Apple TV and out to the HomePods, you're going to introduce some lag there. And I wouldn't recommend that.
Bluetooth is a little bit laggy.
It may be doing Wi-Fi direct. I don't even know exactly what it's doing there.
Yeah.
Anyway, like they sound good, but I feel like everybody who writes about how they sound is kind of missing the fact that they're just not reliable.
Come to think of it, my minis, every once in a while, one of the channels
won't work.
I
mean, they've had these products out there for like 5 years now, and the stereo pair stuff still is
the same thing.
It just, sometimes I will. Over the years, because I've had a HomePod since the beginning and a stereo pair in my house, I will say, why do they sound so weird? And it's almost always because one of them has just stopped playing audio until I unplug them both, plug them back in, and then usually it'll come back. But it just happens. They're not unplugged. They're still on the network. They're still visible. It still thinks it's a stereo pair. But one of them just is like, I'm taking to the day off. It might be
hard to do. It might be hard.
I think it is hard to do.
I mean, other speakers do a better job of it?
I think Sonos' stuff does a better job of it, and it's more reliable. Yeah.
I have to admit, I'm so bitter about the way the Sonos handled their amp, which I have a lot of, that I just they just stopped.
Abandoned it. Yeah.
Yeah.
They just, I was like, okay.
Did you push this review yesterday on sixcolors.com?
Yeah.
They did do an update yesterday on the HomePods. So.
Yeah, but I think that was the security update. I was updated to the latest versions. I don't think that this problem that's been outstanding for all this time suddenly got fixed yesterday.
Well, mine come tomorrow.
I did update it to last week's updates
before I bought it.
And if it works, well, yeah, but about troubleshooting. I think that's what I came back to is like conventional computer troubleshooting stuff can handle a lot of this. You can say, okay, I recognize there's a problem here. I'm going to restart. I'm going to do a HomeKit update. I'm going to unplug them, replug them.
You're so right on because Lisa will get just. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. And I said, well, but you have to, it works, but you have to do this and this and this and this, and it'll work. She said, I'm not going to do, I don't know. What are you talking about?
If my friend Sean from down the block said, Jason, I want some smart speakers, I'm not going to recommend it. I'm going to say, are you sure you want smart speakers?
And even if you know how to fix it, it's kind of annoying that you have to fix it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right.
It's very annoying.
Yeah.
And it's just an AirPlay. I don't want to just say it's the stereo pair because it's not just that. It's like AirPlay 2. Is not really reliable. I do AirPlay music in my office every day, and like even there, it sometimes a track finishes and the next track starts to play and no music comes out, and Apple Music thinks it's playing music, but no music is playing. And if I go to the next track, then the music starts playing again, and that's just AirPlay 2. So I don't know what to say.
They're all a little. I mean, I have in my bedroom area. Apple's Siri with minis. I have Google and I have Echo. This morning, before I was dreaming peacefully, and all of a sudden, the Star Wars Death March came on, loud. I don't know which speaker. So I'm like my eyes are closed. I go dum 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 dum, and I'm shouting. So I had to shout all three. I said, Siri, shut up. Echo, shut up. Google, shut up. And finally it stopped. I don't know who it was or which was playing, but it was quite annoying. And I asked Lisa, I said, did you just play the Darth Vader's Death March in the bedroom? She said, no. Maybe the kid did. That's just the kind of joke he might try. Or could it just have randomly done it? Or
were you hacked?
I was hacked.
Did you get hacked?
Because that's happened before. There's one of I love him. One of our chatters, nice guy. I had to finally block it. Would like Happy Valentine's Day, Leo, through my Echo.
Oh my God! Don't do it.
You know who you are. It's okay. I liked it. I appreciate it. But I did finally kind of say nobody should be able to call me. No drop-ins.
The best luck I've had. Like I have some Sonos speakers. The Sonos app talking to the Sonos speakers is more reliable than AirPlay. The Sonos
I like it that it's Giancarlo Esposito.
Sure, you can do that.
I like that. He's no, you can't do it. It's his voice. That's the Sonos voice.
Yeah, and
you can't choose it. It's him.
I just don't use the voice for Sonos. I just use the Sonos app, which isn't very good is the problem, but it is reliable. And Spotify,
the app works fine.
The Sonos app also, the Sonos speakers support Spotify Connect, and that's also more reliable. So, the challenge here for Apple is that I just don't think.
Why did they bring it back?
I don't know.
What were they thinking?
It sounds good. I think internally they believe that their software is more solid than it is. I think that's it.
That's not good. Because it's not. So would you say? Well, no. You said don't. You said Steve, don't buy it. Neighbor Steve, don't buy it.
Right.
But Geek, maybe buy it.
Sure. Anybody who is willing to do did you unplug it and plug it back in? Anybody who knows those sorts of things.
Or Lisa.
You could figure it out. Or toggling the AirPlay, or getting it back to the right status on your iPhone where you're playing it to the speakers and not to your own phone, or all of that stuff. If you get through all of that, you can make it work, and it sounds good. It does. And I have had them for 5 years.
Yes, she has one in her office here and one in her office at home. I don't think she ever uses it. I thought for Valentine's Day it would be kind of nice to replace the minis with the full-size ones. So when the cat steps on it, it really blasts us out.
That's good. You get the bass response.
Yeah, get the bass response. Dum, 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 bum, 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 bum.
It does get really tough with when you're doing streaming to a local speaker over Wi-Fi. Every time that I look, sometimes have that problem. Every time that I look into other people's experiences, particularly on like professional network administrators boards, because they have all the software and all the tools to like radio scan. They always find that there's something nearby on the network that's interfering with whatever line of communication that is being tried and set to the speaker. So really, if you don't have, unless you have an anechoic RF shielded chamber, it's really hard to test these things out, because all you got to do is have somebody who has some quirky piece of hardware, whether it's a brand new subset system from a competing company or a really, really, really old piece of hardware or old microwave. You don't know why it's randomly disconnecting until you upgrade your microwave, and then suddenly it goes away and you never notice it.
Should we say just if you care about sound, you should get wired speakers? Should we say that?
Well, they'll be way cheaper.
They'll be cheaper, and they're more reliable,
wires.
and they don't become obsolete when the technology changes. You don't have to get version 3 of your speakers.
Or an all-in-one speaker. Like, there are also stereo speakers. Like, Sonos makes the Sonos 5 that is not cheap.
We have all over the studio.
But it sounds so great, and it's all-in-one, so it's not going to, like, one of the speakers, one tweeter is not going to go, oh, I've lost the plot, right? Like happens with the HomePod. So there's a lot to be said.
I still
for that.
say get wired, because
and certainly the wired. You can get wired speakers that sound way better than any smart speaker on the market for a fraction of the cost.
Yeah.
Yes, you have to have an amp, but
an amp and wires and
wires.
I mean,
no, there are lots of reasons not to. But depending on your use case, if you just want a stereo pair and you can just put them on, two sides of a table.
I have
with
ELAC
wires.
speakers everywhere with wires and an amp, AV receiver everywhere. That's what I have.
strongly prefer wired for everything.
Yeah.
So I do as little wireless. I do wireless, but I do as little as possible.
There are
with everything
issues.
that I do in production and home and everything else. But I do, it is convenient. Like we grabbed we have the older HomePod, the bigger one, and we take it everywhere in the house. Like we just kind of move it around as needed and set it down. It is nice. I will say it's convenient to be able to turn it on and just have it sound good in some room. And so I think that there's definitely a place for both of those. But I think that the wired is always going to give you, if you're really an aficionado, you're going to get a wired set of speakers, and you might start with stereo, and then I do wish that the HomePods had some kind of, analog in. I know that sounds crazy for Apple, but it would be nice to have like just an 1/8 inch
for that amount of money. Why not have it?
Yeah, I have been using. I just stopped last year, but I was using an iPod Hi-Fi. Remember that?
Yeah,
but it has an aux in, and it sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound as good as the Sonos 5, but it sounds pretty good.
Yeah,
but it has the aux port in, and these things. Sonos has some speakers that have that plug in, but the Apple stuff it doesn't. So at some point, if it's not supported by software in some way, they're just they're useless, and they're not very versatile, because if you want to run an input into them, you just can't. You can't do it.
Yeah, the 5 is $549.
Yeah, it's not cheap.
A speaker.
It sounds great.
Yeah. We have
it's not cheap.
We have the old Moves, which is nice because in the kitchen, because the Moves are portable, so they sit on a charging stand, but like Alex was saying, you could just pick them up, and they're $100 more than the Apple thing. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know if they're better sounding. I'll put them.
I don't think they sound as good, but
yeah, they're portable. They have a
versatile.
battery in there, which is nice, and they do AirPlay too. And they have Giancarlo Esposito is in there, the head of Los Pollos Hermanos. He's not very smart. He's always saying, I don't know what you want, but it's nice because he's in there. And I like him.
And maybe it's better if your smart assistant has that attitude, right? It's like, what? What do you want?
What do you want? I'm busy. Here.
I don't know. Beat it.
I got an empire to run. Let's take a little break.
That sounds like a Jason problem to me.
Say their name. That was my favorite ad. Was the return of Breaking Bad on the Super Bowl. That was, at first I thought, did they just take the old footage and put pop chips in their, or whatever those things are, pop corners, in their hands? Or did they shoot all new? Because it looked exactly, it was the same RV. It looked exactly the same. I guess that RV's in the back lot
God
somewhere.
bless Bryan Cranston. He is so good. He is so game for everything. He just keeps shaving his head for if whatever Tonight Show gags. Like, you know what? Fine, I'll shave my head.
Sure.
I'll put on the plastic pants. We're good.
I'm sure whatever they paid him for a Super Bowl commercial was worth it.
That too, but it's just like,
how much does Squarespace pay Adam Driver? $7 million for the ad, but how much do you pay Adam Driver to make the ad? It's got to be, well, it can't be $7. Could be a lot, though.
It could be $1 million.
$1 million.
I mean, it could be $1 million. Yeah. For him, it was a day. You know, like it was probably a day of work.
Right.
You know, so it's not a bad payday.
No. Yeah. Our show today brought to you by ZipRecruiter. You know, we talk a lot about how hard it is to find people these days. It is. It really is. But that's why we use ZipRecruiter. And I tell you what, it works really, really well. Despite what people are saying, despite all the tech layoffs, there are a lot of jobs out there. Unemployment is very low. People are getting hired. But when you have an opening in your company, when we have an opening at our company, we want the right person because the company's just, it's made of people. The right employee, the right person in that position can take you to the moon. The wrong one could bring the whole company down. If you need to hire, do what we do. Go to ZipRecruiter.com/MacBreak. Not only that, you can try it for free. We're a small company. So when we are down an employee, everybody suffers because everybody's got to pitch in, fill that job, get that work done. That's why Lisa immediately goes to ZipRecruiter. Like she gets the resignation letter. She goes, okay, we got 2 weeks. Let's go. Goes right to ZipRecruiter. I've seen this multiple times at breakfast. She go, okay, post in it. Pushes a button. It's actually harder to write the job posting than it is to fill it because as soon as you push the button, ZipRecruiter posts it to more than 100 job boards, to social. They cast the widest net. The good news is all of those applicants, as soon as they start pouring in, they don't go to your email or your phone. You're not filling your voicemail. They go to the ZipRecruiter interface where it's very easy to screen them with multiple choice, true, false, even essay questions. They scan all the resumes into same form, so it's easy to scan through them. You can rank them, rate them, hire the right person fast. But then they do something extra special that, to me, makes all the difference in the world. See, a lot of job hunters go to ZipRecruiter. They've got more than 1 million current resumes. So they use their technology, their matching technology. I like it. They don't call it AI. It kind of is, though, to find the qualified candidates for the job you just posted. So it looks at what you just posted, what the requirements are, looks at those resumes, and says, hey, here's 20 people we think might be right. You look at them. You go, you know what? Those 3 are fantastic, and you invite them to apply. And I'll tell you every single time you invite somebody to apply, they're so flattered. They're so happy to be asked. They follow through. They show up. They do the interview, everything. It's really great. They're much more likely to apply. And you're much more likely to get an employee who's really excited to be there. I think ZipRecruiter is fantastic. She'll post at breakfast before lunch even. She'll start saying, hey, we got a good one. It's like fishing. We got one. I got a bite. And this one's really good. The next one, really even. Oh, and that is a great feeling when you're down a person to know you could hire somebody right now. I love ZipRecruiter. You will too. 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate in the first day. Find quality candidates fast. Let ZipRecruiter help you keep your team growing strong. Find the right person. That's the key. Go to ZipRecruiter.com/MacBreak. You can try it for free. ZipRecruiter, ZipRecruiter.com/MacBreak. Just like the show. ZipRecruiter.com/MacBreak. We thank him so much for supporting MacBreak Weekly. We thank you for supporting us now more than ever. You really make a difference when you go to that website and you use that particular URL, ZipRecruiter.com/MacBreak, because then they go, oh, it works. Just like ZipRecruiter. It works. Thank you, ZipRecruiter. Apple's having a little trouble manufacturing in India. You know, this is the big thing now. What with balloons and all, we really got to get out of China. So
they started with a really big balloon, and then they went to a smaller balloon, and
we don't know though what those other balloons. They haven't said they're Chinese yet.
There's a bunch of science kids that are just like,
some kid. You know, we launch in the world 1,600 weather balloons a day. Hundreds in the U.S. alone.
Which is probably why they were filtering them out before this.
They didn't. NORAD didn't want to see them. Nobody's attacking us with a weather balloon.
NORAD just turned the gain up a little bit, like, let's not pay attention to that. Yeah, exactly.
Well, now we know, unfortunately. But that's not the problem. The problem is other things, the geopolitical situation, et cetera, et cetera. So Apple has been trying to move out of China. Story in the Financial Times today. Apple's manufacturing shift to India hits stumbling blocks under pressure to unwind its China-oriented supply chain, you know, following the COVID disruption and so forth. Apple has been sending product designers and engineers from California and China to factories in southern India to train locals. But, you know, and I bet this happened in China when they first started producing phones in China. They're having trouble. A casings factory in Hosur, run by Indian conglomerate Tata, one of Apple's suppliers. About 1 out of every 2 components coming off the production line, half are good enough to be sent to Foxconn for assembly.
Yeah, and they say in that article that there is a goal that it would be 0. I mean, you'd have 100%, but that doesn't happen on Apple products.
Right.
Like, you know, so the thing is, that's their goal, but the fact that half, we don't know what it is in China. Like, it's not 100%. So what they're not telling us what that failure rate is. When the first touchpads came out, you know, the trackpads that didn't have any mechanical. The rumor is that the failure rate on those was 60%. 60% of them had to go back when they were tested. So
Apple wants 0 defects, so they're not going to accept it.
You want, we all, you know, and I want a pony, but it doesn't mean that the factory process is imperfect, and they're not getting 0 defects anywhere. I guarantee it. So I don't know what the defect rate is in China, but it's probably 10 or 15%, and. So I
just mean 0 defects per unit. They're going to reject any unit that's not.
Yeah. But I'm saying Apple's good at that. The problem is that you just have how much of it do you have to send back.
Produce
this is the part when people say this is how much the phone costs. What they're not calculating is that model is what percentage of them don't ever get into a box.
There may also be a cultural difference, because the Times says in China, suppliers and government officials took a whatever-it-takes approach to win iPhone orders. Former Apple employees describe instances in which they'd estimate a certain task might take several weeks, only to show up the next morning to find it had already been done at inexplicable speed.
Well,
next paragraph says operations in India are not running at that sort of pace.
It turns out if you run everybody into the wall and make them go 20 hours a day, you can get a lot
A
of things done.
former Apple engineer briefed on the matter said,
"A totalitarian state,
right?
So much easier.
You got some pull."
India has ambitions in that direction. I mean,
Modi would love to crack that whip.
Start looking up a BBC documentary on the current administration and see how quickly all of those reportings get struck down by YouTube and elsewhere.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's China manufacturing. First of all, the article was talking specifically about iPhone case parts, not necessarily.
That's right.
Not necessarily like full assemblies. And the article also mentioned something that I've read here and there, that occasionally 0 manufacturing defects obviously it's an ideal. It's not a real goal, but they get damn close sometimes. But the thing is, how long has manufacturing in India? I think the last, did it start with older phones in like 2016, 2017? And I think I don't know what this article is referring to, but I know that I do know that the iPhone 14 parts started being manufactured in September, or at least that's when they announced it. So if they're not up to speed after 3 or 4 months, having never manufactured this part before, I'm not saying that's okay, but that doesn't mean that that's a fatal issue that will prevent Apple from wanting to pursue manufacturing outside of the systems that they know and love.
Well, I like what you said, Leo, about how this is probably how it started in China. I mean, I know people sometimes poo-poo Tim Cook and other people at Apple when they say that, you can't just pick up the supply chain and move it out of China because there aren't other places like the United States that have expertise in this particular area, and you have to build manufacturing expertise. I think this is a great example of that, where this isn't you flip a switch and now you're making things in India. You have to do tough stuff that we don't think about, like go to this factory and say, okay, you're going to make these cases for iPhones, these aluminum parts, and it's going to take us 5 years to get to a failure rate that we're happy with, and that's just the cost of setting up a brand new business in a new place that doesn't have expertise like that. And they can ship in experts, and maybe that'll speed things up. But I think you're right that this is really about Apple having to invest in India to build it up to become a place that can manufacture at this level that they expect.
And I'm not knocking it. Vanch in our chat room is pointing out, everybody jokes about the Apple tax, but this is where it comes from, he says. They have an insane quality standard. You want the hardware to be reliable.
And if it's a part that other people use, Apple can come in and say, we're going to take the best parts, and the ones we reject get sold out to someone else. But if it's a molded aluminum iPhone shell, no one else is going to use that shell. So it's just melted down.
Melt it down and start over. Okay. Tata, the company I mentioned, is a big industrial conglomerate in China. The Financial Times says they have ambitious plans to become a full-service Apple supplier like the Taiwanese, and it has the approval and backing of the Indian government. They're in talks to buy an iPhone assembly plant that was owned by Wistron in Bangalore. Wistron exited wants to exit after experiencing labor unrest and protests in 2020. Apple's encouraging it.
It's a pretty technical company as well. So
they'll make cars, don't they? Tata?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They just bought.
They make everything. They're like the Samsung of India.
Okay.
Yeah. And they have a huge fiber network. They did a lot of BitGravity was bought by back in the day was bought by Tata.
No kidding.
And,
I didn't know that.
Switch, and the Switch, which is a huge fiber network in the United States, just got purchased about a month ago.
Oh.
So Tata is definitely kind of moving up that ladder, as well as just taking their scale and really moving towards more value-added products. And so this is definitely probably a high one on their list.
Indian government has a simmering border dispute with China. Let's not forget. And that might be another reason why India might kind of foster some growth there.
Apple needs to get out of. It's not that they need to get out of China. They just need to get so that it's 30%, 40%, 50% of their supply chain, that it doesn't go to zero. Right now, if something happened, if China went into Taiwan or another big thing, it would just shut Apple down. Like they wouldn't. Yeah. They would have no phones, or very few. And so they need to be building 30, 50, 70% of their capacity outside of China. The hard part is again, that there's so much ingrained after decades of, or 15 years or whatever of production. It takes a long time. It will probably take them another 2 or 3 years to be not as efficient, but efficient enough to be another supplier that gives Apple somewhere to go. And I think that a lot of people, when generals talk about need to be ready to go into Taiwan by 2027, all the companies in the United States need to be out of China by 2027. And so that, I think that's the mistake that the Chinese government's making, is by having these public proclamations of when they're going to cause horrible trouble. That is a horrible problem for all these corporations. They are setting this exodus up that is going to destroy their country, financially destroy the country. It's a crazy.
Although it takes a while. I mean, this is why, at the end of the article, they say, they quote an analyst who says, if Apple had wanted to be making iPhones in India, they should have started 5 years ago. Yeah. It takes 5 years to get up to speed. So,
And how many weeks did it take for Russia to get completely cut off after the invasion of Ukraine? All you need is banks to be prohibited from doing transactions with a country, and oh my goodness, Apple is in trouble.
And it just, even without the banks being cut off, it's just that it means that it's socially unacceptable to do work in Russia right now, and that'll happen in China. And, I think that I don't think it clarified for people what could happen until Ukraine. I think there was a lot of talk about it. No, we should do something. But I think when Ukraine hit and Russia, basically no brand could work in Russia, I think a bunch of brands took notice and said, this is, when we got China rattling about this, the China-Taiwan conversation looks a lot like the Russian-Ukraine conversation. So I think that there was enough, it wasn't apples to apples, but it was close enough that a whole bunch of corporations now have connected the dots, and they're like, we gotta get out of here, So
it was the Christmas future for sure.
Yeah.
Some guy at Macworld writing what I think is a fairly link-baity article.
Well, I didn't write the headline.
What if Apple's next big thing never comes? 4 scenarios that could spell Apple's doom.
I mean, I think I submitted
Number 3 will surprise you.
Imagining Apple's biggest potential threats, but they don't ever leave my headlines in there. But this is a perfect connection to the previous conversation. Because,
doom. What if? Yeah.
I think the short to midterm worst threat Apple faces is a confrontation with China. And because they're just not prepared at this point for the loss of their supply chain. And then the long term is, I really believe, is just literally what comes after the smartphone as a product category, because I have a hard time believing my other scenarios are, what if Apple just kind of doesn't pay attention to the iPhone and it fades away, which seems unlikely to me. I feel like we're going to have iPhones and Android phones battling it out for a long time to come. And then the other threat is like government regulation. And even there, it's possible that government regulation could completely break Apple's business model. But it seems like Apple will respond and survive, and that's not an existential threat. But and I heard from some people who wrote me and said, yeah, I think you understate the issues in China, but I don't think I did. I think that it's absolutely true that in the near to medium term, that is the one thing that could really cause an existential crisis for Apple. And in the long run, my other point was, this is why they're spending money on that AR VR stuff, is that really when you've got all the money Apple has, more than $100 billion of cash, the way you make sure you're going to survive in the long term is by investing in the potential replacement for your biggest product. And that way, if your biggest product gets replaced, guess what? You've got a new biggest product to replace it. But the China issue is, I think, the one that they can't just flip a switch like we've been saying. It is going to take years for them to get out of that one. And if something happens in the meantime, that could be extremely dangerous for Apple.
I think services are a big deal for Apple as well. I think you're going to see them try to grow that from 30% to 50% of their revenue, because that's something that they have a lot more control over than hardware. And so, being able to have, and I think that they'll keep on looking for where they can add those services to that process. And I think the AR, VR stuff is all part of that as well, is there's a lot of opportunity there. And so I think that I do agree that China is a big problem for everybody, but Apple probably more exposed than most in being able to make that work. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah. And Apple is in kind of it's great that they're doing such great work in expanding services. Let's not forget that the App Store is included as part of the services pie. But the thing is, one of the reasons why the iPhone competes so well in a really competitive phone market is that it really is its own category. There's nothing quite like an iPhone. And a lot of it really is about the emotional connection that you have to it, the way it feels in your hand, the way it responds to you, the way that you treat it like a lapdog or like a little pet. Services, I don't think anybody is like, oh my goodness, I have such loyalty to iCloud. It makes me feel good when I click into it and I sync my documents. Really, iCloud is just another cloud sharing service. Apple TV really is just another streaming service. Apple Music, really, it's a very high quality one, but how many years have they been competing with Spotify directly? And Spotify is still not by an order of magnitude, but by a multiple, has a much larger paid audience. So if Apple really does have to keep selling hardware, because that's the special sauce, that's where they put the aura of, we know how to make physical devices that people tangibly react to and are willing to pay a premium for. If they were to try to invert that pie and basically turn themselves into 62% a services company, I really think that would be very, very volatile for them.
Well, I don't. Generally, I mean, the business side of this is that generally subscription is the least volatile thing you can do, because people, in most cases, in almost every business, including your gym membership, all the way up, it's a pretty stable business model, and so probably one of the most stable business models because people just don't change that often, and they change it. And especially as the lock-in builds up. As someone who's totally into the Apple ecosystem, the thought, I mean, I still have Spotify, I think for some random reason. I think I just can't get some of I was unable to properly export some stuff out, but I haven't opened Spotify in a year, and I thought about that recently because I was thinking about, to your point, getting rid of the subscription because I'm not using it anymore. And I think that Apple can kind of just keep weighing on. I don't think they're trying to get rid of iPhone sales. I think they're just trying to grow services so that they're even that much bigger. So iPhones keep selling the way they are. But the bigger that services model gets, and the bigger that they keep on opening up these accessories and all the other things that they're putting out there, I still think that that's why the home vertical would make a lot of sense for them to make 5 core assets that all just happen to work with everything, because it'd just be another thing that would add 10 or 15% to their revenue, but it doesn't really get them out of China. So I think that I do think that services are a big piece of that. I think that I'd be really interested to see. I mean, I just do think that there's a lot of people that are almost guaranteed to buy things from Apple right now because they take so long and because they usually come out working. I think that the AR systems will probably do pretty well. And I think that the car, if they ever put it out, people like me would buy it. So we were like, sure, I'll get one of those. So I think that I don't, because I can tell you one thing is most people don't care about their car. And you look at that, like an Apple user probably cares about the Apple brand way more than any car brand that they have.
I don't know. I mean, people
are pretty attached to their Teslas until Elon became.
I mean, I think people are. I think people are attached to their $400 Apple Watches. They're attached to their $1,000 phones. They're attached to their $2,000 laptops. Are they so attached to that logo they're willing to spend $30, $40, $50, $60, $70,000 on a car from an unproven company? I don't know.
That's what they said. The problem is the problem with that is that that's what they said with phones. I know it's more money, but they said, you don't know anything about phones.
It's so different.
It was a very similar thing though.
I see where you're getting at, but I don't think the two are comparable.
I think that it's just that my relationship with cars is the same as my relationship was with the Palm Trio, which is that I drive the car that I least hate. I don't have a car that I love. I haven't driven a car that I loved ever. Just like this is the best one that I can afford. So I think that's usually
you are unique. I don't think the world is going to beat a path to Apple's door to drive the Apple car.
We'll see.
I don't think so.
No, but again, if you've got $100 billion in cash,
you can advertise the hell out of it.
Place some bets and see what happens. But I think the AR VR thing is the place where they're really placing a bet against, like, how do we make sure that our iPhone, because like it's the iPhone, right? That's the story. When we talk about the Mac and the iPad, that's all great. It's the iPhone and the ecosystem around primarily the iPhone. And do we think that's going away? I don't think so. I think it's going to be around a long time. I think I said in that column, in a decade, I would be shocked if Samsung and Apple weren't the two biggest phone makers, right? Like it's hard to imagine.
Own it forever. They're just going to own it forever.
And the smartphone, people are like, oh, but what's next after the smartphone? It's like, guys,
we don't know.
The smartphone is the culmination. I would argue the culmination of the entire personal computer industry.
I would agree.
Was leading to the smartphone. We're not going to see I don't think we're going to see a product category like that probably in our lifetimes.
I agree.
And if you're one of the major players in that category, pretty nice place to be. And I think Apple's biggest real vulnerability is that they just kind of get fat and happy and lazy, and their product suffers, and over time it just slides away and it ends up being super mediocre and not good. But I think the most likely scenario is they're just going to be rolling in dough for a long time to come, as long as they can still make phones in China. And as long as the iPhone doesn't get replaced by, glasses that we all wear. And that's why they're spending tens of billions of dollars on AR and VR.
There's a proximate threat and there's a distant threat.
Yeah.
The proximate threat really is China.
I think it is.
And to some degree, government.
A little,
you mentioned government.
They would have
also
to break them. I mean, it is possible they could say you can't put apps on the phone anymore. You have to you have to download apps from the internet, and you can't preload any apps. And it could or something else. You have to license your OS.
It's not going to be the U.S. government because Apple is too much of a driver of value.
No, but like
and
the EU,
economy. But the EU doesn't care if Apple falters.
I just have a hard time imagining that even the EU would break their business model. Like, there's lots of things Apple doesn't want the EU to do because Apple wants to make lots of money. But even if the EU prevents them from doing those things, it's still hard not to see Apple being a wildly profitable company.
So China's number one, clearly. Number two, government. Distantly. I mean, the iPhone, I think that's not threatened for quite some time.
Long time.
And I think it's very unproven that a car or AR, either one of those is going to be the next big thing. I don't think we necessarily know what the next big thing is.
And if there were another next big thing floating out there, and I think that's true. I think the truth is there isn't another next big thing floating out there anytime soon.
Right.
I think it's going to be a long time. If there were, then Apple and Google and every other tech company would be spending tens of billions of dollars on that too, because they don't want to be replaced.
This thing that you put in your pocket is pretty close to perfect. I don't know if you can. They tried to kind of replace it with a watch. It's too small. Put it in the ear. I don't think so. On the eyes, maybe not. I honestly think that this is a very optimized form factor. Maybe that's short-sighted.
And you can add on
what we're using.
You can add on the watch and the headphones and things if you want.
You can have adjuncts
to have them be sort of like using that as your central processor.
Yeah.
But at the core, a supercomputer that's attached to a high-speed, computer network that goes all over the world that runs custom software in your pocket.
I would submit that as long as there are pockets, there will be phones. I mean, seriously.
There is
even
the
science
end of the world
fiction,
danger.
they're carrying around things in their hands that are computers.
Yeah.
Yeah. And let's not forget about one of the most pertinent parts about smartphones. You can pay $1,700 for a smartphone. You can pay nothing for a smartphone.
Yeah.
And essentially the hardware today is good enough that there's a certain basic table stakes consistency of features, and also there are features that are better on one handset than the other, but mostly they're all just inert devices that connect to the same apps and the same features. So it's hard to figure out when you look at phones. There's nothing that looks like it's going to knock those phones out of people's pockets. Just like someone who looked at the first laptops 30 years ago might be surprised that, no, it's still the dominant platform. People who looked at your basic, hey, here's a pointing device, hey, here's a screen, hey, here's a keyboard in the late 1980s, 1990s, that's still the dominant thing. Nothing came to replace it because it does that job really, really well, and there's enough variety in the marketplace so that no matter what kind of need you have, you can find the thing at the price point and at the form factor that you need. So
I guess, though, if I were going to try to be, contrarian, I would point out that computers, because IBM didn't patent and copyright and trademark and do all the legal things to protect the PC, their market completely got undermined by compatibles. Apple's avoided that cleverly.
Yeah.
There is no iPhone compatible, but I could see perhaps a scenario, and it's a bit of a stretch, where people go, it's not safe to use the iPhone because it's a big company that owns it. I want something that's open. And there's these guys making phones that are open and secure and not a privacy issue, and they're cheaper than the iPhone. This market could be undermined.
It seems it would be a tough one. It's not impossible. I don't think anybody's saying it's impossible. I just think
Samsung sells more phones than Apple.
I think sure, but Samsung is also
they're another
big company with Google powering them, so it's two Apples basically working together there. So the Linux or something else more open.
Why couldn't there be a third party? I mean, couldn't it be an open
complex ecosystem?
It's too complex for somebody to come along and just say, yeah, because Linux is the
people have tried. People talk about it. They're like, "Oh, we're gonna have a new phone. It's gonna change everything," and it never does.
There's plenty of reasons to not want to use Mac or Windows. No, that doesn't mean people run the Linux.
I think my bigger argument would be if there were a real geopolitical schism, and for example in China, if they were going to just sort of cut themselves off from Apple and Google, that there might
they'd create this.
They would perhaps even based on Android, but they would create they already have an independent
Android in China is de-Googled
system. So that would be an alternative for at least some markets.
And Samsung has threatened to do that a couple times, with their own OS. So
it's not so
Samsung's
hard to make this hardware, is it?
Well, I think Apple's very good at the hardware. I think that there are peers like Samsung who are also very, very good. But Apple's hardware is
company could come
very
along
good,
and duplicate
and they're
this.
building their own processors, right, which give them advantages too.
They're smart. They're really pulling up the drawbridge in every place they can.
But and that's why my iPhone argument is that I think it's going to be hard to displace them as one of the players, is because you can't just surpass them in one of those areas. You have to surpass them in multiple areas.
Replace them, but will they always have 50% of the market? Or whatever it is. What is it globally? It's US is 50.
Yeah, it's less globally.
Globally, Android's like 80, 70 something.
Yeah. So they're already kind of a minority player worldwide, and it doesn't matter. They make more money than anybody.
Well, and they've got the high end of the market, and it's high profit margins and all of those things, right? So that's why they're printing money. Right. It's going to be tough to displace them. And I mean, my original intro to my little column on Macworld was about my dad, who he passed away 10 years ago, but I still think about him all the time because he grew up in the middle of the Depression, and he had that Depression mindset his entire life, which is like we saved everything. He fixed stuff with the wire out of a coat hanger like all the time. And Steve Jobs, when he came back to Apple, that's what he did with Apple's culture: is take every dollar off the table. Don't hire too many people. It's why they didn't lay off people, is they're so slow at hiring people, because Apple is kind of paranoid about its existence. And it's funny to step outside of that and look at Apple and say, this company that's completely paranoid about the fact that it could go away at any time and it can't have partners, it has to make everything for themselves. And yet it's actually kind of hard to envision scenarios where it is not still around making huge amounts of money for maybe decades. That's
by the way,
kind of funny.
That same editor that wrote the crappy headline took your dad out of it as well.
No, I cut that part because it was like a little too much. I'm my own editor too. I was like, this is a little self-indulgent to talk about my my dad.
I'm liking it.
So
I'm liking it.
Out.
That brought it.
I cut it out, but it is definitely
that generation.
Steve Jobs did to Apple what that generation did, which is say never assume that you're going to have.
But you can build as many moats as you want. What you can't control is people's mindset.
It's true.
And we've seen it happen before. I mean, that's what happened to MySpace. It wasn't that they were superseded by something technically better. People's mindset changed. And at some point I could see people's mindset saying, for whatever reason, there's no evidence this is going to happen, but for whatever reason, no, I don't want Apple anymore.
The iPhone's not cool anymore.
The iPhone, I don't like it. It's dangerous. It's something.
The advantage is that they've got all the market share and they've got all the apps, and so they don't have the risk that Facebook has, where people are like, I'm tired of Facebook.
Again,
it's like,
they really pulled up all the drawbridges.
Right, because just choose. If you don't like that app, try this other app on the iPhone, and you can just keep on going.
That's what kept Microsoft, try as they might, from making a mobile platform. They didn't have the apps.
Yeah.
And it killed Windows Phone.
And I think it's tricky. And I think Apple's pretty good at the PR thing, because the PR is part of it, is to make sure that the brand stays shiny. I watched this great thing last night about why Nickelback is so unpopular.
Yeah, why is Nickelback so unpopular?
So it came down to, they analyzed it. They said it came down to one comedian on one show, but it happened to be
it became a meme.
To be used over and over and over again. So it became meme-ish, and it became this thing. And they said that and the fact that they were just getting so much airplay. They said there was a time when at every second of every day, Nickelback was playing somewhere in the United States.
But that's exactly the shift I'm talking about, where anything could trigger it, and it just, if the timing is right, and Apple could be the next Nickelback.
It just feels like they have so far to fall that even then they'd be able to survive. But
we're fish in the water. We don't see the water, right? We are so it's hard for us to imagine replace Google, replace Apple. How could that replace Microsoft? But it happens all the time.
It's totally real, and I think it gets back to a little bit of what Andy said, which is the fact that the hardware keeps you kind of embedded, because we can think about things, but then we still have a Mac and we still have these other things that were in our phone and our watch and everything else. So it slows down some of that movement. It's one thing not to buy a Nickelback album. It's another thing to change off your phone or your operating system. And so I think that that would happen very slowly. I don't think it could happen very suddenly.
Though. My daughter, everybody in our family's Apple. My daughter insists on using Android. She says Apple is a cult. And I think it's generational.
That's been going on for 40 years.
It's her peer group. Yeah, the cult of Mac, right? But she says, I'm not going to join that cult. I'm sorry, you guys are crazy.
It's fine. It's just that I think that the problem is that Apple's been exceptional at finding what 90% of the people want 90% of the time. And I think that it's hard. It's hard to get, because that's a big market, and they don't care about being cool. They don't really. I mean, some people are getting Apple stuff to be cool or whatever, but most people it just works. It just works, and it doesn't. They don't. I think Apple users care less about their hardware than Android users, to be honest with you, because they just want it to be out of the way and have it just do its thing. They don't want to geek out on it as much. They just want it to work when they turn it on and move around. And I think that people who want to play with it more tend not to use.
Well, if you make a phone a commodity, that's the commoditization of the product, right? If the product becomes a commodity, like the PC became a commodity,
Right.
then Apple, you'd have. But
I think that's the greatest danger to the iPhone, honestly, is if we end up in a world where nobody bothers to make native apps anymore and everything is a progressive web app and they're all just the exact same across all platforms, then Apple has even less. They still have differentiation, right? Because they've got their own, rendering engine and they've got their processor. But if they lose apps as a concept and there is no software anymore, so every phone runs exactly the same web apps, that hurts Apple.
That's why
badly.
the EU is to fear, because that's the first chink in the armor, is you start to undermine that Apple moat. And, a little bit, just remember the boy in the dike, a little hole in that moat, boom, you get flooded.
Ironically, though, it won't be the EU that kills Apple in this scenario, I think. It'll be Apple's bad relationship with its own developers and Apple's development tools and Apple's whole platform for developing apps, because that's what I keep hearing is, people get frustrated with Swift and Swift UI and things like that. And companies would rather just invest in web technologies instead of investing in Apple's development tools.
Build a Python phone so that anybody can develop for it in Python.
Python phone, you and me.
You and me. We're going to make the Python phone.
I mean,
everything will be really slow.
Yeah, that's okay.
I mean, it's just like
it's for
I think
snakes.
that people talk about it, but I mean, I think the hard part is it's competing with someone who's actually writing native code is pretty hard.
It is hard.
I
learned that lesson. Yeah.
I worked on a product where we developed a product about 3 months on iOS, and it ran perfectly. And then they were like, okay, we're going to move it to React Native. And then spent a year just watching it just goo into just it was as if you just dropped it into, molten molasses and then let it dry. And then, React Native is just a disaster. Anyway, so so I think that people say they want to do that kind of stuff, but when it actually comes down to it, the problem is you're competing with people who buy a lot of apps that are written natively, and when they're used to the native written apps, you can feel it. you can feel the other versions of it. And
I'm just saying, don't get complacent, Alex. Things change.
I don't think that they should.
Sometimes.
So what I will say is, I don't think Apple is complacent ever.
I think you're right.
Like, I think that is the thing about Apple, is that they are always scared. They are always frugal. They are always looking for the knife behind them. That mentality is so. I mean, anytime
Andy Grove
you've known anybody
the CEO of Intel, wrote the book "Only the Paranoid Survive," and he left, and suddenly Intel, it's not as paranoid.
But Apple is constantly paranoid. Like all the things you see Apple do is out of
1997 is I mean, Steve Jobs set up Apple University, I believe, in part just to instill that ethos in Apple, which is never take anything for granted. They're coming for you. Tomorrow we could be completely destroyed. You've got to, everybody's out to get you.
It's harder when you have $200 billion in the bank.
A lot.
Though.
It is a lot harder, and
but it's still there.
It is, and it also makes you look worse. If you have that attitude and you're riding high, you're not seen as frugal. You're seen as cheap. Right, like it changes public perception of you too to have that attitude.
Yeah, why is
you're
Apple
not the underdog
fighting
anymore.
Unionization in its retail stores?
You
can afford to give
billion
people more money
in the bank. Yeah.
Hey everybody, Leo Laporte here. I am the founder and one of the hosts at the Twit Podcast Network. I want to talk to you a little bit about what we do here at Twit, because I think it's unique, and I think for anybody who is bringing a product or a service to a tech audience, you need to know about what we do here at Twit. We've built an amazing audience of engaged, intelligent, affluent listeners who listen to us and trust us when we recommend a product. Our mission statement as Twit is to build a highly engaged community of tech enthusiasts. Well, already your ears should be perking up at that, because highly engaged is good for you. Tech enthusiasts, if that's who you're looking for, this is the place. We do it by offering them the knowledge they need to understand and use technology in today's world. And I hear from our audience all the time, part of that knowledge comes from our advertisers. We are very careful. We pick advertisers with great products, great services, with integrity, and introduce them to our audience with authenticity and genuine enthusiasm. And that makes our host-read ads different from anything else you can buy. We are literally bringing you to the attention of our audience and giving you a big, fat endorsement. We like to create partnerships with trusted brands who are in it for the long run, long-term partners that want to grow with us. And we have so many great success stories. Tim Broom, who founded IT Pro TV in 2013, started advertising with us on day one, has been with us ever since. He said, quote, "We would not be where we are today without the Twit network." I think the proof is in the pudding. Advertisers like IT Pro TV and Audible that have been with us for more than 10 years, they stick around because their ads work. And honestly, isn't that why you're buying advertising? You get a lot with Twit. We have a very full service attitude. We almost think of it as kind of artisanal advertising, boutique advertising. You'll get a full service continuity team. People who are on the phone with you, who are in touch with you, who support you with everything from copywriting to graphic design. So you are not alone in this. We embed our ads into the shows. They're not added later. They're part of the shows. In fact, often they're such a part of our shows that our other hosts will chime in on the ad saying, "Yeah, I love that." Or just the other day, one of our hosts said, "Man, I really got to buy that." That's an additional benefit to you because you're hearing people our audience trusts saying, "Yeah, that sounds great." We always over-deliver on impressions, so you know you're going to get the impressions you expect. The ads are unique every time. We don't pre-record them and roll them in. We are genuinely doing those ads in the middle of the show. We'll give you great onboarding services. Ad tech with pod sites that's free for direct clients. Gives you a lot of reporting, gives you a great idea of how well your ads are working. You'll get courtesy commercials. You actually can take our ads and share them across social media and landing pages. That really extends the reach. There are other free goodies too, including mentions in our weekly newsletter that's sent to thousands of fans, engaged fans who really want to see this stuff. We give you bonus ads and social media promotion too. So if you want to be a long-term partner, introduce your product to a savvy, engaged tech audience. Visit twit.tv/advertise. Check out those testimonials. Mark McCrary is the CEO of Authentic. You probably know him, one of the biggest original podcast advertising companies. We've been with him for 16 years. Mark said the feedback from many advertisers over 16 years across a range of product categories, everything from razors to computers, is that if ads and podcasts are going to work for a brand, they're going to work on Twitch shows. I'm very proud of what we do because it's honest, it's got integrity, it's authentic, and it really is a great introduction to our audience of your brand. Our listeners are smart, they're engaged, they're tech savvy, they're dedicated to our network, and that's one of the reasons we only work with high integrity partners that we've personally and thoroughly vetted. I have absolute approval on everybody. If you've got a great product, I want to hear from you. Elevate your brand by reaching out today at advertise@twit.tv. Break out of the advertising norm. Grow your brand with host-read ads on twit.tv. Visit twit.tv/advertise for more details, or you can email us advertise@twit.tv if you're ready to launch your campaign now. I can't wait to see your product. So give us a ring. They were pushing into, remember Apple made a big deal about we're going to offer you buy now, pay later. We're going to offer you a way to rent or pay a monthly fee for your devices. All of that has not happened, even though Apple said it would, and sooner than it has happened. This is from Mark Gurman's Power On newsletter. Apple's push into next-generation financial services hits delays. You've been arguing, Alex Lindsay, Apple should get into the banking business.
I'm not arguing that they should. I'm arguing that they are. Like, they're like.
But it's just moving a little slower,
slow
right?
burn.
Weren't they going to do savings accounts?
They're gonna. I think that they're gonna. It may go in fits and starts, but eventually there's going to be. I think that there's going to be the ability to put your money into some kind of thing that slowly becomes more and more looking like an Apple bank.
Bigger moat. Another big moat. Yep.
I think Jeff Bezos, said your margin is my opportunity, and I think Apple's is your dissatisfaction is our opportunity. And anything that is mediocre or below, I think, is something that someone at Apple is looking at as a next outlet. And I think that no one likes their bank. People.
So the question is,
put up with their bank.
What are the delays?
But that's it.
It's
hard. It's regulatory.
Yeah, Gurman says, I believe the delays to all 4 initiatives stem from engineering challenges, as well as work on a next-generation financial system to support them. That's an interesting. He says, creating this underlying platform is one of the most ambitious parts of Apple's finance efforts. It's called Project Breakout. Its own technology for handling interest calculations, rewards, credit checks, approvals, transaction histories. Currently, Goldman Sachs does all of that for the Apple Card, right? They want to take that back in-house. In fact, Apple got a lot of heat because of how Goldman was running Apple Card's credit ratings and so forth.
I think Goldman Sachs was always a short-term, it was, short-term, when I say short-term, a decade. It'll probably be a decade of Goldman Sachs. But I think that they... I think it made sense for them to get somebody in that's already got all the regulatory basis, figure things out, see the data, so on and so forth. But I think that eventually it makes a lot of sense for Apple to kind of own that whole thing. And their ability to disrupt this, again, it's pretty high because you get a lot of people with savings accounts, and then you have a lot of people that need to borrow money. You get a very closed system pretty quickly. So it's no company in the history of the world has been able to do what Apple is on its way to doing if it decides to go that path, which is that you have the people saving money into your accounts, and they're taking that money that they're saving in your account, and you're providing it as credit to people who are buying stuff from you at a global scale. That's
well, it was also a smart move because apparently Goldman has lost billions of dollars on the Apple Card. So Apple dodged that bullet. Gurman says after a delay of several months, the company is prepared to release the first version of Apple Pay Later, BNPL, to consumers. Several weeks ago, it started allowing corporate Apple employees to test the feature. Earlier this month, it opened up to retail employees, essentially creating a test group with tens of thousands of people. But those people are enjoined from sharing screenshots or, you cannot. So we're not seeing any leaks around that except for what Mark says. They did that with the Apple Card in 2019. They provided it to retail staff about a month before the public release. So maybe we're getting close now to BNPL. Also, what about the Apple high interest savings account? They announced it in October. They said it would be released in the coming months. Well, I guess we're still in the coming months, technically.
Thank goodness.
Yeah. Apple quickly added the underlying code, Gurman writes, to support the feature in iOS 16.1. Goldman Sachs published its fine print for the service in December. Since then, zippity-doo-dah. iPhone subscription service. We still don't know what that would be. Some are saying it's like a rental where you just pay a monthly fee and you don't really even own the phone. So we're still unclear what that's going to be.
That one is legitimately interesting. I don't understand why. It's going to sound like I'm just making a glib joke here, but if they want to get into banking services, why not have fast food delivery? Why not have a chain of pizza stores? It's just such a random thing for them to get into that's not necessarily tied into what Apple historically does and historically does well. But the idea of having a subscription plan for phones, I'm sure they've seen some data that says that there is a revenue source in the iPhone that they're not capturing, and that's what happens to this phone after the person upgrades. And that, let's say they don't necessarily pass it down to one of their kids or something like that. It goes to a reseller, or it gets parted out, and that person makes a profit on the sale, then makes a profit on reselling the parts, makes a profit on reselling the phone. I'm sure that they're looking at numbers and saying that what if we were to capture that market ourselves? What if we were the people who get the recycled phone when someone's done with it? We are the ones who can refab it and repackage it and resell it in another part of the world, in another market. That makes a lot more sense to me than most of the other stuff that's been in these banking articles.
Apple has hired its first people officer. This is also from Bloomberg. From Medtronics comes Carol Surface.
Right. She's Carol iPad now.
Yeah, they have to change that name. Many people think Surfaces are iPads, so it would be okay.
These are the jokes.
Yes. This was something Deidre O'Brien was doing. She's in charge of retail now. Carol Surface. Is she a Surface Pro? We don't know.
Well, she seems very professional.
Seems professional. Yeah. Sorry, I'll stop. Surface brings in, it's hard to say it though, brings an incredible depth of experience, the company said, which will be invaluable in supporting our teams around the world and building everything that makes Apple so special. Deidre O'Brien will continue to run retail. Yeah, it's weird not to a company of their size not to have somebody in charge of HR. That's what People is. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Deidre O'Brien, most of their people are retail employees in the grand scheme of things.
That's
so it sort of made sense, and now she's sort of like going to specialize in retail, and this is one of those cases too where it's like she can't just keep doing both of those jobs, right? So they brought in somebody from the outside, and I'm very skeptical always of Apple bringing in senior execs from outside because could there be a culture clash there? But if you're going to do it somewhere, something like HR that's
where you do it.
Is a good place to do it
because HR is the same everywhere because of law.
Yep.
And you need to know the law, right? In fact, we use, as many companies do, a third party to do our HR. So HR is outsourced. Many smaller companies do that because it is such a technical thing. And I think somebody who's been running HR for a big company is going to make the best sense for that particular job.
I wonder if she has any background in union negotiations.
I was going to say, and this way Deirdre doesn't have to do the union busting speeches anymore.
While she's the head of those those people's employment, right? She's the head of retail and she's union busting. They can hand that off to somebody. I don't know. I mean, that if you head of HR, my uncle was the head of HR at a big company for a long time, and negotiating with the union is part of the job. That's a big part. If you're in a potential union job or a real union industry, you gotta all of that. So I wonder if that was why they brought her in, is to be the point person on dealing with this, because Apple's trying very hard to not allow their employees to unionize.
Yeah, we were talking about some of the retail people getting to use the buy now, pay later. Not in Towson.
No.
The unionized Apple store.
They don't get that perk.
You don't get that. Spite. It is spite. It's just spite. It's just mean. Yeah. Okay, fine.
No, it'll be interesting to see though, because if I were any outside executive who is brought into Apple, I would want to have that conversation of like, well, what happens if this doesn't work out, right? Because whether it's somebody who flames out like Browett, who was the head of retail for a little while, and he left very quickly, or even something like Angela Ahrens, who clearly, she put in some time, but it was also not a long-term thing. They and I think they both knew it.
You give them stock.
So if I'm the Surface, I would say, how do I get compensated if we walk away?
I want to vest now.
Because there's definitely a non-zero chance that it won't work out, just because Apple is so peculiar and particular. And it's not about the people being a bad fit as much as it is that Apple is a tough fit for anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's interesting. You look at Medtronic, where she worked before. Right in the top, they're saying that they've got 9% of their workforce is unionized. I've got their global human rights and labor standards policy in front of me, and it explicitly has under the human policy statement under human rights, under number 1 is diversity, inclusion, fair treatment. Freedom of forced labor, but also in there is freedom of association, saying that basically explicitly we're going to cooperate in good faith with the bodies of our employees.
They moved to Ireland. They may have to say that now, right?
Yeah,
they're in Ireland.
but this was a document produced just a year ago, so. Okay. I don't know. It could be. I don't know. I'm hoping that Apple is aware of the fact that at least they'll have to begrudgingly live in a world in which employees are not willing to believe that, we're Apple's sons and daughters and everybody, and they love us and they'll take care of us, and we don't need representation because we love Apple so much. I hope that they're acknowledging that this is not the world that they live in.
That was the company line, and it was Deidre O'Brien who delivered that. So, maybe that would be great. That's hopeful. Maybe this is a shift in company policy,
or at least while they were doing the search, they realized that would be a valuable thing. That hopefully they're not going to hire someone who used to be the head of a labor union, but someone who knew how to accommodate both unionized and non-unionized workforces would probably have been a positive.
It's official. Apple is killing the CSAM photo scanning feature. They proposed it a year ago after a lot of furor. They decided to put it off. But now in Wednesday.
And then they were hoping we'd all forget it when they quietly let it disappear.
Yeah. Actually, this is an old story. I don't know how this got in here. This happened late last year when Craig Federighi. So I apologize. It got on my list, but that's it. That's an old story.
Workflows.
Workflow.
It's tricky.
You think
headline workflows?
It's too easy.
Maybe your workflows look and say, "Wow, it's really slow." I wonder if would you like to hear a random selection of old news?
Yeah,
let's go back into the past.
ChatGPT wrote this one. This one I know is new. Wired magazine reporting Apple and Spotify are scaring audiobook narrators. After a backlash, Spotify paused an arrangement that allowed Apple to train its machine learning models on their audiobooks.
Yeah.
Remember Apple's offering those nice voices, those really sweet voices to people who can't afford to have a human narrate their voice, their book? Well, it turns out that's been trained on real people. Gary Furlong, you might know the name. He's a Texas audiobook narrator. He learned of a clause in his contract between Findaway Voices, which is an audiobook distributor, and authors, which gave Apple the right to, quote, use audiobook files for machine learning training and models. And then Findaway was purchased by Spotify last summer. Oops.
And then Spotify licensed these to Apple.
Yeah.
This is, we talked about this a while ago, and we're sort of like, this isn't taking the jobs of the narrators, but in my mind, one of the huge questions in the AI is what did you train your model on?
How'd you train it? Yeah.
And on the one hand, I think it's also actually kind of sleazy if the contract that they had their narrators sign said, we're not just buying your work on this audiobook, we're buying your voice and we're going to take it away. Like, I think no reasonable person would imagine that was what was going on here. And it's really not cool because this could put them out of business.
This is where a union helps because SAG-AFTRA represents those artists, those book reading artists. I'm a SAG-AFTRA member, along with screen actors and radio folks. They represent people who read books. They contacted the two companies, and an email to members from SAG-AFTRA said that they had agreed to immediately stop all use of files for machine learning purposes for union members affected, and that the halt covers all files dating back to the beginning of this practice. Thank you, SAG-AFTRA. The union is still working with Findaway toward a solution that recognizes the union's concerns, such as safe storage of the recordings and data usage limitations and appropriate compensations. It's a contractual issue. If you're gonna let them use your voice, you're gonna damn well get paid for it sufficiently so that it will make up for lost income down the road.
And this is a huge issue. A lot of actors, for instance, are finding that, like, you work for Disney, or other big studios. They're saying, though, by the way, we have the right to build models of your voice, and use that model for whatever reason possible. So as a result, a job in which they would basically have to pay you to come back into the studio to loop dialogue would be, nope, we'll just have some intern type into a keyboard, and then we'll have someone with control over your performance that is not you, is not making choices that you rejected at the time, and also we're not going to pay you. So good, congratulations, welcome to the family.
This is this is the beginning of a. It's going to happen with artists. It's going to happen with writers. It's happening across the board because you got to train these things in something a human created.
And it's terrible. It's a lot more complicated than it once was, because you could there was a time where for some of these training models you could say, well, no, we're not making a synthetic version of this one person's voice. We are using this as part of a data set of 2,000 voices just to learn what a variety of voices sound like, so that this model can then synthesize brand new voices that didn't exist before, and thus don't necessarily take away your specific job. However, now that it's a lot of AI researchers are now trying adversarial attacks on these models to see, is it possible to get this model to generate or regenerate data that it was trained on, and finding that no, actually that is possible. It's not easy necessarily, it's not trivial, but it is possible. And once you establish that these models are capable of reproducing an intellectual property that has copyright protections on them, suddenly this looks like it's built on a pile of sand that has to be really defined on a legal basis soon before it can actually be used in any commercial setting.
I think that the law professor consulted by Wired said actually these guys are probably out of luck. Legally, Spotify and Apple are in the clear. Morally, that's another matter. At some point, courts are going to have to weigh in on all this. There's lawsuits going on right now from Getty against Stable Diffusion. Artists, I'm sure, will sue. So this is going to end up in the courts, right?
The hard part is that, again, we've talked about this before, that if they lose in court, I mean, the threat of court has kept a lot of people at bay, including Google and Microsoft, who are kind of now forced into pushing it in because of the competition. But I think a lot of them stayed away from it because of the potential legal ramifications of turning the AI on that they've had for a decade. If they lose these cases, it'll be game on. and that's the real brinksmanship here, is that those legal cases, if they set precedent, it gets really hard, really fast to put that genie back in the bottle. And I think that the hard part, I think, for narrators as well, is that I've been listening to audiobooks since the late 80s when they were on cassettes and then CDs and then virtual, and I cannot name almost a single narrator unless it was the author of the book. Like, oh, this was narrated by the author of the book. And I think that's some people can get really into it. I'm just saying that I listen to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of books, and it's kind of a wash as to, like, I don't pick a book because of that narrator. I pick the book because of the author. And so now I definitely have narrators that I don't like, and I definitely listen to a book and go, oh, that was a great narrator. I don't know if I'm in their fan club, though. Like, I don't remember, like, I'd have to go back and look at who was narrating one book or another. And so I think that, I mean, there are definitely people who keep track of it, but I'm going to guess that for the most part, the vast majority of audiobook listeners don't know who they're listening to. Yeah, and that's a huge problem if the AI starts to pick up. Because for me, I wouldn't, like if you gave me an AI read now admittedly, I don't listen to fiction, so all I listen to is nonfictional stuff.
Fiction listeners do know who reads the book. Yeah. And we select often books because it's the same narrator.
You had Dan Morin on Twit a while ago. I don't know if he mentioned this to you, but he's got a great narrator. He's got a great narrator, so great, in fact, that he has gotten so many audiobook sales from the fans of the narrator who have followed the narrator to his book. So it definitely happens in fiction.
We had Daniel Suarez on Triangulation a couple of days ago. His narrator, Jeff Gerner, narrates all his books, and there are many Jeff Gerner fans out there.
Just follow the narrator.
If you listen to Harry Potter and you heard Jim Dale read those books, very often you follow Jim Dale. It's because you listen to nonfiction. Because you're right, Alex, nonfiction books, the narrator is completely irrelevant. Often they're terrible, to be honest with you, because they're not actors. To do fiction, you got to act the parts. You got to act, and it's a very different job.
But I think that, nonfiction is a pretty large mass of books that are out there, and I think that that's going to be where you see the AI stuff really dig in, is in the nonfictional area. I do agree that the fiction stuff is going to continue to be humans for a long time, because it's just so hard to, figure that out. It's a pretty complex process. But I think in nonfiction and magazines, I think magazines are going to be all read to us pretty soon.
Well, and Apple went into this, as we talked about a few weeks ago, saying that this is for the stuff that they can't afford a full-on audiobook production, because these are little indie books with small sales, and you can never make your money back if you did it, and it creates accessibility for people who prefer audiobooks. Right. And I think that's true, and I think there's probably a path forward here, right? I think there's a scenario where Apple has said that they sort of proudly base it on a real human narrator and not a collage of narrators, but a human narrator. And I think there's a scenario where for books like this, you pay for the rights, you work with a narrator, they know they're going to be training a model, and then there's probably a royalty structure for using them. Not only a per use, but like if something is a hit, that the voice of the book gets paid. And I know that's antithetical to businesses who just want to run a model for free and not ever pay a human being. But, if they pay the human being, we could probably work this out.
Yeah. It's only the typical pay for reading a fiction audiobook is $5,000. It's not expensive. And I bet you it's a lot of work too, by the way. I bet you a lot of readers would say, hey, give me $500 and you can have my voice for that book. Yeah. Just $500 a book because I don't have to read it. I think, or some amount. But it's going to be a fraction of the full amount.
But the logical issue, the logic thing here is that obviously a real human recording their voice has value. That voice has value, or else they wouldn't be trying to take it. If they thought that basing something on something that's completely synthetic was just as good, they would do that and not even have to mess around with any of the legalities or any of the payments. So this is one of the things that we're just going to have to navigate. I do think that one thing that I absolutely am in support of is that the ability to, the idea that if any publishing platform can then, as it's publishing something to the web, as it's publishing something to a newsletter, as publishing to whatever else it is also simultaneously publishing it in audio for people who don't have the ability to read text for whatever reason. If that means that the table stakes for publishing is that everything is going to be available for people who don't have the ability to read text, that is a
good.
very, very elevating position.
Yeah.
That should happen.
That's good. I mean, there's Lighthouse for the Blind. There's people who volunteer their time to read books. I mean, this is a good thing. I think that it's safe to say that AI-generated text, art, and narration is it's better than you'd expect, but it's not as good as the best humans can do. So I suspect the people who are great at this, just like great film actors or great artists, will still be employed because what they do cannot be duplicated by a machine. And I don't know if that'll ever be possible.
The challenge, though, is always what's the feeder system after that? So once they age out, once whoever you have that is the best ages out, if there isn't the lower hanging fruit left anymore,
well, people
there's
do
nowhere
art
for someone to get.
People do art because they do art. I don't think you have to worry about people stopping to do art.
No, but I would say that it's hard to get good at something unless you're getting paid over a decade to do it all the time. Like you don't have to worry about it on the side. So you absolutely can. It's just that there's a feeder system that goes into that, and it's someone getting you start doing free stuff for voiceovers, then you're doing work, but then you're getting to do it all day, every day because you get paid for it, and that's enough to pay your bills. When you don't have that, you don't get those 10,000 hours. You don't get the
then we will lose.
Time it takes.
We will lose out because there won't be great artists if that's the case. Well, that's probably not true for fine art, for painting. Because painters just paint for free like Van Gogh didn't ever get paid. But it isn't the case probably for performers. Performers need a place to perform, as you say, to get better.
There's a lot of performers that have a hard time making ends meet as well.
Well, it's normal. I mean, and YouTube has given people a chance to perform for free. But I mean, I would read books for free.
Rihanna just performed for free.
Yeah, I don't understand why. That's crazy.
Oh, that's easy. That's an easy calculation. 100 million people. Yeah, it's not. I'm sure she made enough from Spotify to.
I hope. But Prince got paid. The Weeknd got paid, right? I mean,
did they?
Didn't they? Do you think the NFL doesn't pay people to perform at the Super Bowl?
My understanding is they don't pay people to do that. Wow. It's all PR. Yeah. If you don't want to do it, they'll let somebody. Getting in front of 100 million people is valuable. From a brand perspective.
Well, you should just tour for free.
Well, I mean, if you do the tours are what make money, and what drives the tours is having.
I get it. The exposure,
Super Bowl thing. So there's a loss leader there. I mean, you think about how long she was up there and how much those ads cost per every 30 seconds.
It was probably a fairly easy gig for her, right? Yeah.
Obviously, she did it pregnant.
She's brave. She rode those things up and down and up and down. That was scary.
Pregnant.
Yeah,
pregnant. Like, see, that's a flex. That's a flex. Yeah, like I can do that. I don't even need to work out for this. I'm just gonna,
It's funny. That was the conversation that dominated the halftime of the Super Bowl. Is she pregnant? She's pregnant. Is she pregnant?
I know. You're like, is it?
That's all anybody's talking about.
But there was a lot of attitude there. I mean, she doesn't need to move very much to
no, and she didn't move very
much.
Does. Yeah, those guys in the hazmat suits did all the moving. Jony Ive's latest design. We talked about the clown nose for Red Nose Day. He is prolific. Man, if you don't have Steve Jobs holding Jony Ive back, man, he just cranks him out. Now, the emblem for King Charles' coronation.
It's got to be the conversation of like we had Johnny do this. You know, like it was definitely like,
you know, that's classic.
Her eyes.
When it came time to create the emblem for King Charles, we had a few simple questions to ask.
I think it's mostly like thistles. We want thistles everywhere. Just thistles. Right? What is with all the thistles? Is that
you know something, Your Highness? This is a once-in-a-lifetime thing. Let's go for 2-color printing. I know. I'll get
blue and red.
You 4 quotes. I'll get you 4 quotes before we put in the job. But
if it's good enough for the flag.
Alex, I want you to have Midjourney design Chaz the seconds or the thirds, whatever number he is.
Chaz 3.
Chaz 3. Oh, yeah, the second guy.
Trey.
Yeah, Chaz Trey. I want to see his Midjourney version of that logo, Alex. I know you can do it.
Chaz
Trip Chuck. Trip Chuck.
Trip Chuck.
Trip Chuck. Trip Chuck. That's good. I'm going to call him that from now on.
It's the royal hat.
Well, obviously, Alex, you're not as down with the streets as I am, if I may be so.
New crown just dropped.
Oh, anyway, this is according to a new page on the royal family's website. Wait a minute. Even the royal family has to tell you about cookies? Okay, royal family, I agree. The coronation emblem, which will feature throughout May's historic celebrations, which, by the way, every person in England is expected to contribute to in some form or fashion, pays tribute to the king's love of the natural world. Oh, that explains the thistles, depicting the flora of the 4 nations in the shape of St. Edward's crown. So 4 nations, what, Scotland, Wales, England,
and Northern Ireland.
Clover for the Irish, right? Thistles for one of them.
Scotland.
Daffodils for England? I don't know. The emblem pays tribute to the king's love of the natural world. The rose of England, the thistle of Scotland, the daffodil of Wales, and the shamrock of Northern Ireland. I'm Scottish. That's why I noticed the thistles right away.
Mm-hmm.
It is pretty busy. I mean, it's got very a lot busy onto that.
It's like a tapestry.
Yeah.
It's not typically Jony. It's not a Jony Ive joint, honestly. I think
good designer is working for the client. Give the client what they want.
Yeah, especially when they have people beheaded.
Yeah, that's true. Heavy, the head that wears the crown of thistles. You can download these.
I'm not sure it'll reproduce well on a business card. That's what I'm saying.
I'm going to download all the emblem files.
Be sure to download the guidelines.
Wait a minute. It's going to cost me money? What? They're using some WeTransfer.com. Really? Is that owned by the Royal Trust? Emblem guidelines. There's a different one for the Welsh coronation emblem. It gets coronated more than one. Well, no, it's the same one.
But it's in Welsh.
Which means it's long. It's got a long, all the way around thing.
Not a lot of vowels.
Not a lot of vowels.
A lot of apostrophes.
Ted Lasso, season 3 premiere date has been set now at Apple. Are you all excited about that?
It's in a month. It's in
soon, March 15th.
A month and a day. Yeah.
New episodes. They'll do as they often do. 2 or 3 episodes up front, and then weekly after that on Wednesdays.
And it's Wednesday drop. They usually do a Friday drop. They're doing a Wednesday drop.
Wednesday.
Ted Lasso, trying to stake out some ground there.
12 episodes. The newly promoted AFC Richmond. They've got. That's spoiler.
For the end.
I didn't know that.
That's the end of season 2.
Yeah, but Spoiler. Okay, so they got promoted.
Spoiler for 2 years ago.
Faces ridicule. That's not a spoiler. As media predictions widely peg them as last in the Premier. They got into the Premier League. Good for them. They got into
good for them.
Good for them.
Good for those
for the
fictional
characters.
Anyway,
there's a trailer.
Yeah.
I can't play it because they'll take us down. Because last thing Apple would want us to do is promote them.
The story here is that they thought they were going to get this last year, and that they did a bunch of extra shoots. And the Jason Sudeikis, apparently, he wants to do it right. I think he's maybe feeling the pressure a little bit of having such a high-profile show and wanting to have it be exactly right. And so there was a lot of talk about when it was actually going to start rolling out because they did a bunch of extra stuff. I think they expanded the season.
He owns the IP of Ted Lasso, right?
No,
he created it for
it's NBC, doesn't it?
NBC. He did some of it before, but then they were in the NBC ads, and then the show is produced by Warner Brothers. So there's a lot of different ownership going on in here.
As long as Hannah's in it, I don't care.
Yeah, they're all there.
Yeah.
They all know. I think everybody involved with Ted Lasso knows this is probably the thing they're going to be most associated with in their careers, other than like Anthony Stewart Head, sure, Buffy the Vampire Slayer maybe, but like basically everybody else. Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the greatest TV show of all time.
Of all time.
Yep.
I've heard. I've been told.
I
haven't seen it. Heard it's good.
It's really good.
Run by a bastard.
Yes, well,
is it
unfortunately.
good now?
Yes.
Is it good now? Like, did it age well?
Some of it did, some of it didn't. But in general, I think it is the model for a lot of the stuff that came after it. It's still pretty great. Yeah.
Modern TV. Ted Lasso is not a cowboy show, despite its name. Want you to know.
It's about soccer, a sport that exists mostly outside the U.S.
It's the one where you're not allowed to use your hands. That's how I remember it.
It's
Foundation is getting another season?
Yeah, everything gets another season on Apple TV.
You get another season.
I just want to see Severance season 2. That's all I care.
I think that's
Did anyone finish Foundation?
No, not me.
I did.
John did. Snell did.
Was it worth it?
Yeah.
Was it good?
Yeah, I thought it was okay.
It was soporific.
I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it. The moments of dullness were punctuated by moments of excitement.
Okay.
So,
there was some stuff I liked. There was things I liked and things I didn't like.
Yeah.
And then the problem was they were mixed together.
Yeah, it was. That's always the problem.
It is always the problem.
They know that. That's why they don't say, "Oh, skip this episode. This is the boring episode. We put the exciting things in the next episode."
They should.
Imagine that.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's every story that I want to do. Is there, I guess that's it. Is there anything else anybody would like to add to this before we get to our picks of the week?
Can we be
Go ahead.
Can we be a little bit more arrogant at the top of these shows? We keep saying, "Oh, there's nothing to talk about. Everyone's going to be bored," but then we somehow manage to find a full docket of things to talk about. Usually the stuff like the Island of Misfit Toys stories, the ones that wouldn't necessarily be at the top of the list when there's a new iPhone being released. Yeah,
honestly, I say that firmly with tongue in cheek but that's hard to talk.
Good point.
About, right? So I think every show is a gem here. None of the show we wouldn't bother doing a show if it weren't going to be great. I would just go home. I don't need this.
With your charisma,
you're almost Giancarlo Esposito there. What do you want from me?
I don't need this. I'm gonna take my Moscow Mule and get the hell out of here. That's all. I'm out of. Call me out of here. Before we get to our picks, please, folks. I'm in all seriousness now. We need your help. How would they do this on PBS? The work we do here is so very important, I think, to so many people. And some of them can't afford to help us, but you can, you should. Is that enough guilt I'm laying on you? So here's the deal. Maybe you've seen stories in Axios and elsewhere saying podcasting's over. Maybe you saw the fact that Spotify pretty much fired everybody who had bought all those podcasts last year because it didn't work out. Advertisers are leaving in droves because, 7 million on a Super Bowl, they don't got a lot left. We really rely on you, our listeners, to keep this ball rolling. So I thank, first of all, before I even say what I'm going to say, I want to thank all the people who have joined Club Twit because 6,000 strong, that's fantastic. But About 700,000 people listen to our shows every month. 700,000. That means we're not even getting 1% of you. So what I'd like to do is get that number up, if you would. Now, here's the deal. I'm going to tell you up front. It's $7 a month. And you're going to say, that's a lot of money, Leo. What do I get for $7 a month that I'm not already getting? Well, yeah, you get all the shows you get already, but you get them without ads. That's a start, right? Ad-free versions of all our shows. You also get shows that we do not put out in public. Now, we put out occasional episodes of Hands on Macintosh with Micah Sargent and Hands on Windows with Paul Thurrott. We put those out on occasion on YouTube, but there's many, many more. The Untitled Linux Show is also exclusive to the club. So is the Giz Fizz. So you get extra content because the club pays for it. These are shows that don't have advertising, can't get advertising because, frankly, they're just not good enough. So we want to enforce you to listen. No, that's not right. They're very good shows, but they just don't have the audience yet. They're brand new. Often what happens is shows like This Week in Space, which launched in the club, if you will, generate enough of audience. We can put them out in public, and we do. So club members really are helping us start new programs. They're helping us keep the lights on. They're helping us keep people employed, like John Ashley. He's not free, I just learned. He actually, we pay him. So if you want to help us out, I'd sure appreciate it. Him? Yeah, we pay him. Both the Johns. Handsomely, I might add. We also get, there's more. Yes, for $7 a month, you also get access to the Club Twit Discord, which is more than just a chat room around the shows. Oh, no, my friends. This is a place you can hang with other geeks and talk about everything from ads to beer to anime and autos and book clubs and coding and comics, fitness, gaming, dogs in armchairs. Yes, there's a pet section, sci-fi. We have the book club, too, with Stacy. There's a lot more going on in there. It's really a community of wonderful people. There's no tote bag. We thought about tote bags. We got the design, and we said, yeah, maybe no tote bags. Those are good, though. It's a nice try. We really appreciate our club members. We love you, and we love hanging out with you, and we'd like you to be part of the group, okay? That's all there is to it. Go to twit.tv/clubtwit. Just a little belief. It's all it takes. Just believe, my friends. Yeah, actually, it turns out we tried that with PG&E, and they wouldn't. It didn't work. It didn't work. Just believe we've paid the utilities. That is fantastic. Joe made the Mr. Pruitt seal of disapproval. No, thank you, sir. Ooh, that is awesome, Joe. By the way, Joe, thank you for the mug. Joe sent me a mug too. Instead of we send you tote bags and mugs, you send us. That's how the club works. Wow. You send us tote bags and mugs. $7 a month. We should sell this as a sticker. It's a good idea. I love it. Twit. This is why the club's fun. Twit.tv/clubtwit. Please. I beg of you. Please. All right. I think this would be a good time to get some picks of the week. Since you're here, you're sitting right next to me. Here. I think we should get you to start these things off here. All
right. Hey, have you heard about Twitter? They're kind of hard up for cash these days.
Don't give them $8. Give us $7. I'm just saying.
Yeah. And you know what you should do is, if you still, like, so much of my tech community has moved to Mastodon, but there are lots of things, sports writers, a lot of journalists that are still on Twitter. So I can't like completely abandon Twitter.
Where else are you going to get your Elon fix? 24/7.
So give your $3 to Jeff Johnson, who is a great Apple developer, for his web browser extension Tweaks for Twitter.
Oh, what does it do?
It's a Safari extension. It does, among the many things that it does, it will hide all the promoted tweets in your timeline.
Yay.
In the web interface, which you're using now, right? Because they killed all the third-party Twitter clients, and a bunch of other things that it will just make disappear from the Twitter website. so you don't have to see them, because they're in this financial trouble. They've ramped up how many terrible sponsored posts that they have.
How many pillows can one guy buy?
I recommend, and Jeff Johnson makes some other great software, including a Stop the Madness, which is a sort of universal blocker of a lot of garbage that's on the web as a Safari extension.
I think I use that one. Yeah. I like that. Yeah.
But it's definitely it's worth it. I use it. It is great. I had it turned off and I didn't realize it, and I went to twitter.com and I thought, oh no. And then I turned it back on. I updated it, turned it back on, and then all the terrible things went away. So if you need to be on Twitter and make it go away with Tweaks for Twitter.
Yeah. Tweaks for Twitter works in Safari and Chrome and Chromium-based browsers.
It's a cross-platform browser extension. Nice. And there's a version for iOS too, I believe. So yeah, you can get it everywhere if you're forced to use the Twitter website.
$2.99. Tweaks.
A bargain.
For Twitter. Mr. Alex Lindsay, you got a pick for us there?
I do. So I've talked about the fact that I don't really do laptops much anymore. I have a laptop, but it's not very useful. Like it's an old Air Intel. And so I needed some way to move my computer around, and I have a Mac Studio. And so I got this, I thought I had done it before, but I got this little case.
Oh, look, it's so cute.
It's like a little suitcase. And so this is the RLSOCO. It is a case for my Mac Studio, and it's got like a little opening, which I keep one of my little Link webcams in.
You could Mises in there and stuff.
Yeah, and so you can, and I've got, it's got a little area on the top here, but so if you think that you can't move your computer around, what I do is I have all my monitors and everything else set up in one place. I just put them in here. I have a whole bunch of monitors on the other side because I only take this to the office. I don't really go anywhere else. Anyway, it's a great little case, and it actually, I'm using it all the time. Anytime I go to the office and I need to work, I just take my Mac Studio with me, just because my willingness to buy a laptop to do it. The problem is that it'd be hard to find one that was as powerful as what I'm using. I usually use almost all the ports. And so I looked at laptops and I just said, I'm just going to move this back and forth. So it's a nice little briefcase. It's
kind of cool. Yeah.
It works. It was one of those things that when I do the Gray Matter show, it needs the studio. I can't do it on a Mac Mini. And so, because I'm doing Memo Live and I'm bringing in a bunch of inputs and doing a bunch of things, and I just needed to move the studio around, and it's turned out really well.
And you got to assume there's a monitor where you're going, I guess, right? You don't carry.
Well, I'm taking this to the office. I don't. Yeah. I'm going on a trip after today. I'll be gone until next week when I'm here.
Oh.
But I'll have a laptop. I'm not taking the studio with me that way. But I usually just assume I'm not going to do very much. Like I'll fill out forms and stuff like that. I don't really do real graphics work on a laptop anymore.
They make one for the Mini as well as the Studio, so you can choose your size by the catchily named RLSOCO.
Yeah, I know. It's a worse name, but it works out really well. It's super solid. Again, I've been using it for over a month now, and I'm really happy with it. And again, if you're going back and forth, if you're being forced to go back to the office and you're going back and forth and you've started to buy Mac Minis and Studios instead, and now you have to go into the office, you can just have a monitor in the office and a monitor at home, and you just set it down and plug it in. And this is a little case that makes it all work. So, yeah.
I don't know why Amazon now puts up a sidebar showing me what I put in my cart at one point years ago.
I know. It just remembers. It wants to bring it back.
You like that chocolate bar when you bought it for your mom in 2020. Maybe you'd like to buy it again. What the hell, Amazon? Amazon has really become just this. It's like a shopping mall or something. It's got something called Clinic. What's that? It's got a clinic? Amazon Clinic?
They're also your drugstore.
Oh, healthcare is a massage away.
Oh, yeah. They're moving more towards services, oddly enough.
How long before this title bar has everything you could ever want to buy ever?
Last year.
Yeah, last year.
It already happened.
But you might not get the one you ordered. That's the problem. Yeah, everything you might want to buy, but you're going to look at it like it's...
So I went online. I wanted some shoe polish. So I ordered 4 different colors of shoe polish. Came from 4 different sellers at 4 different dates. It's the
and each one had a
strangest
really
thing.
big box with a little thing of shoe case.
Yes.
Every once in a while, I get these
It's the
huge
same
boxes,
company, Shoe
and
Polish.
it's like, well, someone ran out of boxes. Like
It was
couldn't make their
unclear
quota.
that there was 4 different marketplace sellers selling one little thing of shoe polish.
Yeah.
I kept telling Lisa, I can't polish the shoes until they all come. I'm waiting.
Yeah.
Andy and Akko, you top this thing off with your pick of the week here. You're the topper.
Well, this is for people who want to get some class on the iPhone, musical wise speaking.
Oh, I'm
so
not. I know Apple Music's going to add classical
Prime
music
Phonic
any day
now.
now. Prime Phonic, they bought them.
Any day now. Yeah, there's supposedly like on 16.3, people who like do this sort of thing took apart the binary and they found references to like messages to an app called Apple. Open this song in Apple Classical Music and blah blah blah. So maybe imminent with not with a capital M, but I mean they're supposed they bought the company in 2021. They promised that they'd have the app in 2022 and still in 2023. Okay, fingers crossed. But I just recently discovered a really interesting little niche music player called Tempso, Tempso, which is an interesting optimized Spotify and Apple Music player for classical music. It is, again, it's very niche. It's not going to take the place of the actual like Spotify app or the Apple Music app. But when you do it does the sort of thing that we're hoping to see in an Apple Classical Music app, which is like if you want to see Beethoven's Third Symphony. It's not necessarily that I want to see like the 3 most popular ones. It's like I want to see all the ones you have, and they say, "Ooh, what's the version that was directed by this person like? What's the version that was performed by this orchestra like?" If it's like an opera recording, it's like I got my favorite opera, Lucia de Lammermoor. And it's like you listen to it performed by 6 different sopranos, and it's 6 different versions of that character. And this app does one of the things it does very well is stuff like that. So you do a search, you do link it to your Spotify account or your Apple Music account, and it will be a complete front end to that database. It will present you a list of. It makes it very, very easy to navigate between different versions of a certain piece of music, or to drill down on here is one musician and here are all the different pieces of work they did. Now it's free, because it is kind of a labor of love project for the past couple of years of 3 developers that aren't making money off of it. They would like you to donate money to help like fund the support of this app, but it's not as though this is a data harvesting operation or they're trying to sell the service someplace else. As a result, it's kind of quirky and kind of limited. I'm surprised that if there is a way to say, wow, you found me a really interesting version of this aria, I would love to add it to my Spotify list. No, you can't add it to your Spotify list. So, okay, well, obviously you let me open this in Spotify. Well, no. So what am I going to do? Well,
So
you're probably going to.
It's a standalone app. Do you open it within Spotify, or, by the way, you should tell the developers Spotify spelled with an F, because it says Spotify on the website. But okay,
Again,
it's a couple of guys. It's a couple of guys.
Labor of love.
No, I love
yeah.
this idea. I downloaded it immediately because it's killing me. The Apple has, and Spotify, I presume too, has all of the music. It's just not, as you point out, the discovery is not well done.
Yeah, you link it to your account, and I think it basically opens streams through Spotify. So I think you obviously need to have the app installed in order to make it work.
So I can see
like
all
I said,
of
it's not
Corelli. This is nice. I like what they've done.
It's sort of think of it as an alternative like search and navigation and discovery app for this existing service.
Yeah.
I would love something that was that acted kind of like an Apple Classical Music app where I never have to leave it, but it's better than nothing, and it does scratch that itch that you have with classical music, which is that I want to basically navigate. I want to see all the different ways that people interpret this one piece of music and find the one that really, really gets to me on an emotional level, and this will help you do that, and it's free.
That's cool. I want to give them money because I think this, I don't know when Apple's going to get Prime Phonic out, but this is the kind of thing Prime Phonic would do. And this is the kind of thing Apple should do. But now that this is out, probably Apple says, well, we don't have to do it anymore.
No, you do. You still have to do that. You made a promise.
You made a promise. You told us. You told us you'd do this. It is called Tempso. Tempso.
Tempso.
They left out the O. Tempso.com. Tempso. Nice. Thank you. I installed it immediately.
Yay.
I appreciate that. Wow, we have come to the concluding moments of this show, I'm sad to say, but I do thank you, Jason Snell, for driving up here.
It wasn't far.
It wasn't far, and you have a nice light computer you can take with you.
That's right.
So
it's very portable. It's great to be here. Nice to be here in person.
So great to see you in person.
Nice to see you and
take
the whole
some
gang
snacks
in person.
with you on the way for the ride home. I appreciate it.
All right.
Yeah. Jason is at sixcolors.com. If you go to sixcolors.com/Jason, you'll see all the umpteen podcasts he hosts or participates in and all the other places he writes,
and
like Macworld.
You can follow me on Mastodon at jsnell at zeppelin.flights.
By the way, we were talking about that because Shelley Brisbane was on Twitter on Sunday. And I said, what the hell is Zeppelin Flights? And she says, well,
it's Jason.
It's Jason. And I said, oh. Okay, because then we got into a discussion about airships because of that.
I can't resist a novelty top-level domain, and .flights was there, so Zeppelin.flights.
Just begging to be. That's awesome.
That's it. That's
so
mine.
You're at Jason at
jsnell.
At jsnell.
Yeah, I think you can find me. I mean,
I think
you'll
I'm
find
already
me,
following.
And
you.
I'm on. Yeah, I'm actually at twit.social and at forwards to my other thing too.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
You didn't spell Zeppelin right though.
How many L's in Zeppelin?
There's an E. Yeah, it's if you've Led Zeppelin, top
there
a lot
you
of
are.
people, but that's
Look,
me. Yeah.
So should I add you if I'm already following you on Mastodon? I mean, Twit Social or whatever it is. There he is, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, just check me out on Mastodon too.
There's his dog. There's Maisie and some horses.
It's true.
Then you'll know you're at the right
hill
spot.
Behind my house. Yeah.
No one else can have Maisie and some horses.
No,
in their header.
No machine learning. Stay away.
Thank you, Jason. I appreciate you making the trip. Thank you, Andy Anaka. When are you going to be on GBH next?
Next Thursday, 12:30. Go to WGBHnews.org to stream it live or stream it later or stream any of the previous appearances I've done talking about tech on WGBH, Boston Public Radio.
I'm quickly rushing to hover.com to see if I can register balloon.flights. Thank you. It's always a pleasure, Andy. Thank you. Mr. Alex Lindsay, officehours.global. The Alex's attempt to take over the universe with one simple show.
At least entertain it. So
Super Bowl ads on.
We talked about Super Bowl. We talked about Super Bowl graphics. We get kind of geeky, so we don't really talk about the game. We just talked about like the lower thirds and let's talk about the important things.
I should have watched.
I'll tell you, there's been a huge revolution in graphics over the last 10 years. You look at old football games, even from the 90s, and they look so bad.
Key fill is what made the difference.
Key fill.
Where the screen actually starts to buzz when the chyron comes on. Yeah,
there was that big moment where they realized that instead of having to do crop everything in 4:3 because they were still broadcasting it in standard def at 4:3, they said, "Oh yes, from now on our standard def broadcast will be letterboxed," and they embraced 16:9, and it made such a difference because there was this whole side of the broadcast that they didn't use
place
anymore.
We could play.
Nice.
Yeah, exactly.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, so it's we had a good conversation there. We had a great conversation yesterday with VU Technologies. They make virtual sets, so the LED wall sets. But the story is so good. He's like they were in COVID. Their business was going south, and they were like, "We're going to make an LED wall, but we can't afford an LED wall." So they literally ordered the raw components from China, and figured out how to build their own LED walls.
Wow!
And so it was a great story.
Is that bookshelf behind him real or fake?
I think it's real. I think he was actually somewhere, but.
You can't tell.
We don't know.
You don't know. That's the beauty of it. But if you want to do The Mandalorian in your living room now, you can.
See, I thought you meant Alex is behind Alex, and I think that's pretty much that's got to be fake, right? Like Alex is in front of a green screen somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. I'm in Taipei. Yeah, absolutely. So. But yeah, and by the way, Leo, I did do some Midjourney renderings for you. So we started working on some of the Coronation stuff. We got
look at that. Logo. That's much nicer.
We have
look,
this
it's
one.
Embossed. It's made out of metal, and it has the word Rhino on it.
Well,
Crown Royale version.
I love text in Midjourney. I love it.
I know. It's just like, and we will give you random text. Like it's like let's do gobbledygook. Here's another one that's got
beautiful.
It's got some nature.
It's got thistles.
And then
Shreks.
And then earlier we may have talked about something that I thought would be fun, and so I put in Alex Nickelback, or not Alex, Apple Nickelback. So there we go. Apple is your Apple Nickelback.
Okay.
Another Apple
Those apples are not apples.
Pumpkin-like. They're pumpkin-like.
I know, exactly.
That's a good one.
Oh, yeah.
That's a good one.
Put that on a black T-shirt right now.
Let's make that. That's our thumbnable for the show for sure. So people who are listening,
ladies and gentlemen, I've just chosen my lower back tattoo. Thank you. I'll send you a hard copy.
You just have to imagine it if you're listening to the audio. It's Nickelback and Apple together at last.
I'll send it.
Thank you. Thank you. And Alex will perform free at the Coronation if you ask him.
Yeah, exactly.
It'd be great if had somebody there just putting up Midjourney images throughout.
Yeah, exactly. I'll just have Midjourney images just going up. Just give me a couple screens and I'll just.
I swear to God, you could be the next light show. You could be the future, like just Midjourney crap going on in the background.
You know, I'm doing a keynote document right now. I got to do this slide deck, and I started building it. I was like, I can't find the images that I want. And I was like, I wonder how many of these I can do in Midjourney. It turns out all of them.
All of them.
Like so like
they
all
look really
images.
Good. I don't know if you become a prompt master. I think you're the prompt master because those look so good.
Key to the operation is over a flat white background. Then you just remove the background. So you just do I want this object or this person over a flat white background, and you end up with something that you can remove background on in
easily
in Keynote. Yeah. So
cool.
It's super useful. Yeah.
More keynote tips next week with Mr. Alex Lindsay. If you want to hire him, he's available for your next rock and roll show or your next streaming event, 090.media. And if you're interested, absolutely highly recommend officehours.global. Just always worth checking in. There's so much stuff. So much. I want to listen to audio pathology tomorrow. I don't know what that is, but it sounds good.
It's really looking. It's some of our audio folks are going to be talking about when something goes wrong with your audio. Here's how you identify what the problem is, and here's how to fix it, and here's what. So it's usually a pretty good.
And the live sports BTS, is that with somebody who works in a truck?
So that's happening in our after hours. That's not happening in office hours right now, or it will be on Friday, but it's happening right now in after hours, and then we're gonna have a second hour talking about it. So someone is Jeff Keithley is actually doing an event, and you get to kind of see what he's doing in that event. And so in the after hours, you can sit there and just listen to comms and watch them work on it, and then they'll talk about it more specifically on Friday. So it's it's going to be a great hour.
Wow, love it. Yeah. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We do MacBreak Weekly Tuesdays, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. That's 1900 UTC. You can watch us do it live at live.twit.tv or listen live. There's audio and video streams. You can also chat live at irc.twit.tv. Club members can chat in the Discord. We watch both, so comments from both are appreciated. After the fact, on-demand versions of this show and all the shows we do available at twit.tv. In the case of this show, it's twit.tv/mbw. You can also go to twit.tv's YouTube channel, youtube.com/twit, at twit, I think. And when you do that, you'll find links to the MacBreak Weekly show on YouTube and all the other shows. Each of the shows has their own YouTube channel. Of course, while you're at the website, you might also want to subscribe. That's probably the best way to get the show. Pick your favorite podcaster, Pocket Casts, Overcast. I think Marco Arment said he wanted to be on the show, so we're trying to get him on the 28th.
He's great.
We'll see. You're not going to be here on the 28th.
I'm out the next 2 weeks.
Yeah. Where are you going?
New Zealand.
Oh, that sounds like fun. Do you own sheep?
Not yet, but that seems likely.
That's part of the plan. Yeah.
What's weird is Richard Campbell, who is the co-host on Windows Weekly, has dual citizenship and owns sheep in New Zealand. So he might be down there at the same time. I think he's going on his way.
Nice.
Look for Richard. He's hard to miss.
Okay, I'll look for him amid the sheep.
Thank you, everybody, for being here. Now, I'm sad to say it is my duty to tell you get back to work because break time is over. See you next time. Where'd that come from?
Hey folks, I'm Ant Pruitt, and what do you get your favorite tech geek that has everything? A Club Twit gift subscription, of course. Twit podcasts keep them informed and entertained with the most relevant tech news podcasts available. With the Club Twit subscription, they get access to all of our podcasts ad-free. They also get access to our members-only Discord, access to exclusive outtakes, behind the scenes, and special content such as AMAs, which I just love hosting, plus exclusive shows such as Hands on Mac, Hands on Windows, and the Untitled Linux Show. Purchase your geek's gift at twit.tv/clubtwit, and it will thank you every day.